The ice water hit his chest like a declaration of war. Elena Marino had exactly $3 in her bank account, a eviction notice in her purse, and now, thanks to her broken heel and tray full of drinks, she'd just drenched the most dangerous man in the city. Luca Moretti didn't flinch. He simply looked at her with those dark, calculating eyes that had sentenced men to worse fates than death. She waited for the rage. Instead, he smiled. Interesting, he murmured. By midnight, he'd offer her $5 million. By morning, she'd realize the price was her freedom. If you want to see how a waitress survives a world built on blood and power, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city below so I can see how far Elena's story reaches across the world. Tech. The fluorescent lights of Marino's Italian kitchen had been flickering for 3 weeks. Elena had reported it twice to management. Nothing changed. Like everything else in her life, it hung in suspended failure, not quite broken enough to fix, not quite functional enough to forget. She moved through the Friday dinner rush with mechanical precision, her body operating on muscle memory, while her mind performed its nightly calculations. Rent, 12 days overdue. Student loans laughing at her from the depths of default. Electricity bill, a courtesy disconnect notice waiting at home. The math never added up. It never would. Table 7 wants more bread. Marcus, the line cook, didn't look up from the pasta he was plating. And they're asking for you specifically. Elena grabbed the basket of focaccia, her feet screaming in the knockoff heels she'd glued back together that morning. The restaurant's dress code demanded elegance its wages couldn't support. She'd mastered the art of looking presentable on a budget that would make a college student weep. Table 7, corner booth. The lighting there was dimmer, which meant higher tips from couples seeking romance or businessmen seeking discretion. She'd take either. She rounded the corner with her professional smile locked in place and felt the world tilt sideways. 6 men occupied the booth. 5 wore suits that cost more than her annual salary. The 6th, the one in the center, the one who commanded the space like gravity itself bent around him, wore a black shirt open at the collar, no tie, and an expression of supreme boredom. Luca Moretti. Elena's heel caught on the mat. Time fractured into terrible slow motion. The tray tipped. The pitcher of ice water, freshly filled, devastatingly cold, arced through the air with balletic grace. She watched it fly, watched it fall, watched it drench the front of Luca Moretti's $5,000 shirt. The restaurant went silent. Ice cubes slid down his chest. Water darkened the black fabric, spreading like an accusation. Elena stood frozen, the empty tray trembling in her hands, her mind supplying every news story she'd ever heard about the Moretti family. Bodies in the harbor. Witnesses who disappeared. Prosecutors who suddenly retired. Luca didn't move. Water dripped from his collar onto the table. His men shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons, faces hardening into the prelude to violence. "I'm so sorry." Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "I'm so sorry. My heel, the mat. I didn't." "Look at me." The command cut through her panic. She raised her eyes, expecting rage. Instead, she found curiosity. Luca was studying her the way scientists studied specimens under glass, with detached fascination and complete focus. "What's your name?" "Elena. Elena Marino. Elena Marino." He repeated it slowly, tasting each syllable. "How long have you worked here?" The question was so unexpected that she answered automatically. 4 years. "And in 4 years, how many glasses have you spilled?" This is the first time." "Bad luck, then." He plucked an ice cube from his lap and dropped it into an empty glass. The sound echoed in the silence. "Or perhaps excellent timing." She had no idea what that meant. One of his men, a bull of a man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, leaned forward. "Boss, you want me to—" "No." Luca raised one hand, a conductor quieting an orchestra. "Miss Marino has had an accident. Accidents happen." His eyes never left her face. "Don't they?" "Yes. Yes, they do. I'm so sorry. I can pay for dry cleaning. I can—" "How much do you make in a week here?" The shift in topic disoriented her. That's not really—" "Answer the question." Something in his tone made lying impossible. "Maybe 400 on a good week, tips included." "And how much do you owe?" Her throat tightened. Why would you humor me? The numbers were burned into her brain, recited in the dark hours before dawn when sleep refused to come. 38,000 in student loans, $11,000 in credit card debt, $4,000 to my landlord, medical bills, utility bills. She trailed off, the weight of it crushing the air from her lungs. Why are you asking me this? Luca stood. Water had plastered his shirt to his chest, outlining muscles that suggested violence was more than theoretical for him. He was taller than she'd expected, broader, and he moved with the controlled grace of a predator. Dante, give her your card. The scarred man produced a business card from his jacket, extending it to Elena like a verdict. She took it with numb fingers. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, a phone number, nothing else. Call that number tomorrow at noon, Luca said. I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? His smile was winter itself, beautiful and lethal. The kind that could change your life, or end it. Sometimes there's not much difference. He buttoned his jacket, water still dripping from his clothes. Noon, Ms. Marino. Don't be late. He walked out. His men followed, moving with synchronized precision. The restaurant remained frozen for 3 heartbeats after the door closed, then erupted into frantic whispers. Elena stared at the card in her hand. No name, just numbers. A door to somewhere she'd never imagined standing. Her manager appeared at her elbow, his face purple with rage or fear, or both. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you know who that was? I know. You're fired. Clear out your locker. And she's not fired. The owner, Mr. Delmonico, emerged from his office for the first time in months. His hand shook as he lit a cigarette despite the no-smoking policy. That man owns half this city. If he wants her employed, she's employed. If he wants her fired, she's already dead. So she's employed until we hear otherwise. Elena's shift ended at 11. She changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom, carefully folding the card into her wallet. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The night bus home took 40 minutes. She stared at her reflection in the dark window, 26 years old, exhausted, invisible. The kind of woman people's eyes slid past without registering. Useful for survival, devastating for ambition. Her apartment was a studio in a building that had given up pretending to be respectable. Peeling paint, neighbors who screamed through walls, a radiator that clanged like it was digesting scrap metal. She'd lived here for 3 years. It felt like 30. She set her keys on the counter and found the eviction notice where she'd left it that morning. Final notice. 7 days to vacate. She'd already borrowed from everyone she knew, maxed every credit option, sold everything of value. The card sat on the counter, innocent and terrible. She didn't sleep. At dawn, she made coffee with grounds she'd already used twice, showered in lukewarm water, and tried to imagine what Luca Moretti could possibly want from someone like her. At 11:45, she dialed the number. It rang once. Miss Marino. Dante's voice, gravel, and smoke. You're early. I'm punctual. The boss likes that. Black car outside your building in 20 minutes. Be ready. Wait, I don't think... The line went dead. She looked down at her clothes, worn jeans, a sweater with a fraying cuff, boots she'd owned since college. Not exactly power meeting attire. She had nothing better. The black Mercedes arrived in 18 minutes. Dante opened the rear door without a word. She slid inside, half expecting to be driven somewhere remote and final. Instead, they went downtown, to the financial district where buildings scraped clouds and every window reflected money. The car stopped in front of an office tower, so new it still had construction permits posted in the lobby. Top floor, Dante said. He's waiting. The elevator was glass and chrome, rising so smoothly she barely felt the motion. 60 floors passed in silence. Her reflection multiplied in every surface, small, scared, completely out of her depth. The doors opened onto an executive suite that looked like it had been photographed for an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that cost more than her education. And Luca Moretti, standing at the window, perfectly still. You came. He didn't turn around. You knew I would. I suspected. Hope is a powerful anesthetic for people in pain. Now he turned, and in the daylight, she could see him clearly for the first time. Mid-30s, classically handsome in a way that felt dangerous rather than attractive. Eyes the color of espresso, sharp enough to cut. Tell me what you know about my family. Elena chose her words carefully. I know the Moretti name has been in this city for 4 generations. I know your father, Vittorio, built an empire that operates in shadows. I know people speak of your family in whispers, and that most of those whispers are warnings. Diplomatic, But you left out the important part, which is that I'm expected to take over that empire, that my father believes stability begins with family, that he's been pressuring me to marry for the past 2 years. Luca moved to his desk, pouring 2 glasses of something amber and expensive, and that I have no intention of marrying anyone he selects. He offered her a glass. She took it, but didn't drink. 2 weeks ago, Luca continued, my father made a bet. He wagered $5 million that I couldn't maintain a stable relationship for 6 months. His way of calling me reckless, uncommitted, incapable of the discipline leadership requires. His smile was sharp. I took the bet. And you need a wife. I need the appearance of one. For 6 months. Public enough to satisfy the terms, real enough to be convincing. Elena set down her glass before her shaking hands could betray her. Why me? You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women from your own world. Exactly. Women from my world come with expectations, connections, complications. They'd see marriage as an opportunity rather than a transaction. He leaned against his desk, studying her. You, Ms. Marino, are drowning in debt with no prospects of rescue. You're invisible in a way that makes you perfect. No one will question where you came from because no one was looking at you in the first place. And most importantly, you'll leave when it's over. The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like clarity. What would this marriage entail? Public appearances, family dinners, galas, charity events, the occasional business function. You'd live in my home, attend to the social requirements of being my wife, and maintain the illusion convincingly. And after 6 months? The contract terminates. You receive $5 million, tax-free and clean, enough to rebuild whatever life you choose. I win the bet and prove to my father that I'm capable of stability on my own terms. $5 million. The number was obscene, impossible, life-changing. What about... She had to force the words out. What about the physical aspects of marriage? This is a business arrangement, not a romance. Separate bedrooms. No expectations beyond the public performance. His tone was clinical, as if discussing stock portfolios. I need a wife on paper and in photographs. Nothing more. And if I say no, then you go back to your life. The debt, the eviction notice, the endless treadmill of surviving without living. He pushed off the desk, moving closer. I'm not a good man, Elena. I won't pretend otherwise. But I keep my word, and I protect what's mine. For 6 months, you'd be mine to protect. She thought of her apartment, the eviction notice, the electric company's final warning, the way her manager looked through her like she was already gone. If I agree, she said slowly, I want it in writing, contract, legal, airtight. Already prepared. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer, thick with legal documents. My attorney drafted it yesterday. Take it, read it, have your own lawyer review it if you'd like. I can't afford a lawyer. I'll pay for one. I want you to enter this with full knowledge of the terms. He set the folder on the desk between them. I'm offering you an exit from the life that's killing you slowly. In exchange, I get to prove that I'm not the reckless son my father thinks I am. It's manipulation, yes, but it's honest manipulation. Elena picked up the folder. The weight of it was substantial, real. Why did you choose me, really? There has to be more than just convenience. Luca was quiet for a long moment. Last night, when you spilled that water, everyone in that restaurant expected you to cower, to beg. Instead, you apologized with dignity. You were terrified, but you didn't crumble. He met her eyes. I need someone who won't shatter when my world inevitably tries to break them. Someone with a spine hidden under all that exhaustion. And if I don't live up to that assessment, then we'll both fail, but somehow I don't think you will. She looked at the contract, at him, at the city sprawling beyond the windows, a city that had chewed her up and spit her out for 6 years straight. I need 24 hours to read this. Take 48. This is 6 months of your life. Don't rush it. She stood, clutching the folder like a life raft. Why do I feel like I'm making a deal with the devil? His laugh was dark and genuine. Because you probably are. But at least I'm a devil who pays well. Dante drove her home in silence. She spent 2 days reading every word of the contract, researching every clause, understanding every implication. It was airtight, generous even. $5 million at the end, a monthly allowance for expenses during the marriage, healthcare, security, housing. Exit clauses if either party violated the terms. On the third day, she called the number. I'll do it, she said when Luca answered. No hesitation in your voice this time. I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of staying where I am. Honest. Good. She could hear the satisfaction in his tone. We'll marry in 3 days. Small ceremony. Just witnesses. My attorney will meet you tomorrow to finalize paperwork. Welcome to the Moretti family, Elena. Try not to regret it too quickly. The line went dead before she could respond. She sat in her apartment, soon to be former apartment, and tried to process what she'd done. Sold 6 months of her life to a man she didn't know, for money she couldn't imagine, to enter a world she didn't understand. The wedding was clinical. City Hall, a judge who didn't ask questions, witnesses who looked like they attended marriages as part of their job description. Luca wore a suit that probably cost more than the venue. Elena wore a dress she'd borrowed from a former roommate, altered with safety pins and hope. Do you take this woman? I do. Do you take this man? She looked at Luca. His expression was unreadable. This wasn't love. It wasn't even affection. It was a transaction, a bet, a game she'd agreed to play. I do. The judge pronounced them married. No kiss, no celebration, just signatures on documents and a marriage certificate that felt like a binding contract. Dante drove them to Luca's home, a mansion in the hills that looked like it had been transplanted from a European estate. Gates, guards, grounds that stretched into calculated wilderness. Your room is on the second floor, Luca said as they entered. The foyer alone was larger than her entire apartment. East wing. My room is west. The staff will help you settle in. Staff? Housekeeper, cook, security, you'll meet them. He checked his watch, already distant. I have business tonight. Dinner's at 7 if you'd like company. Otherwise, make yourself comfortable. This is your home now. He left. Just like that. Left her standing in a mansion that echoed with absence, married to a stranger, playing a role she hadn't rehearsed. A woman appeared. 50s, kind eyes, practical demeanor. Mrs. Moretti, I'm Margaret. I manage the household. Let me show you to your room. Mrs. Moretti. The name sat wrong, like borrowed clothes that didn't fit. Her room was a suite. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting area, walk-in closet, already filled with clothes she hadn't chosen. The bed could have fit 6 people. Windows overlooked gardens lit by landscape lighting. Mr. Moretti had a stylist prepare your wardrobe, Margaret explained. If anything doesn't fit or suit you, just let me know. Dinner will be in the main dining room, or I can have a tray sent up if you prefer privacy. Thank you, Margaret. The housekeeper paused at the door. He's not an easy man, Mrs. Moretti. But he's fair and he protects his people. You're one of his people now. She left Elena alone in luxury that felt like a museum exhibit. Don't touch, don't belong. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and felt the enormity of her decision settle over her like snow. 6 months. She could survive 6 months of anything. She'd survived worse with less. She changed for dinner, choosing a simple dress from the closet that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. Downstairs, she found the dining room, a table that seated 20, set for 2 at one end. Luca was already there, changed from his wedding suit into casual clothes that still managed to look expensive. He stood when she entered, a gesture of manners that felt choreographed. You came. You invited me. Invitations aren't commands. You're free to eat alone if you prefer. She sat across from him. A staff member appeared immediately with wine, with water, with the first course of something that looked like art. They ate in silence for several minutes. Elena tried not to feel like an imposter using the wrong fork at the wrong time. Your first event is tomorrow night, Luca said finally. A charity gala. Black tie. The stylist will come in the afternoon to help you prepare. What's the event for? Children's Hospital. My family makes a substantial donation every year. It's good optics. Do you actually care about the hospital? He looked up, surprised by the question. Does it matter? It matters to me. If I'm going to stand next to you and smile, I'd like to know if it's for something real or just performance. Both. The hospital does good work, the donation is genuine, but yes, we also do it because it looks good for a family like mine to support children's health care. He sipped his wine. Everything in my world has layers, Elena. Very little is only what it appears to be. Including this marriage. Especially this marriage. He set down his glass. Tomorrow night, you'll meet my father. Vittorio doesn't know the marriage is contractual. He believes I've actually found someone and settled down. That's the entire point of the bet, to prove I can do it. What do I need to know about him? He's ruthless, calculating, and he'll see through any weakness. He'll test you, probably try to make you uncomfortable, definitely attempt to find out everything about your past. Luca's expression hardened. Don't let him intimidate you. You're my wife now. That means you're under my protection, and he knows better than to push too far. But he will push. He'll push. Whether you bend is up to you. Elena pushed food around her plate. I'm not who you think I am. I'm not brave or strong or... You're here, aren't you? You signed the contract. You married a man you don't know to escape a life that was suffocating you. He leaned forward slightly. That's either brave or desperate. Sometimes there's not much difference. After dinner, she retreated to her suite. The bed was too soft. The silence was too complete. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince herself she hadn't made a catastrophic mistake. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. The stylist, a woman named Simone, who spoke in clipped efficiency, transformed her into someone Elena didn't recognize. Hair, makeup, a dress that cost more than a used car. Jewelry that required its own security. You look like you belong now, Simone said, stepping back to admire her work. But Elena didn't feel like she belonged. She felt like a child playing dress-up in her mother's closet. Dante drove them to the gala. Luca sat beside her in the car, checking his phone, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. Remember, he said as they pulled up to the venue, you're my wife. Not my employee, not my charity case. My equal partner. Act like it, and people will believe it. And if they don't, then I'll make them believe it. He offered his hand as the car door opened. Ready? She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, steadying. No, but I'll pretend. Good enough. They stepped into a world of crystal chandeliers and designer gowns, of wealth so casual it didn't need to announce itself. Cameras flashed. People turned. Elena felt every eye assess and dismiss her in the same breath. Luca's hand settled on the small of her back, possessive, protective. He guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing her to people whose names she'd never remember, whose judgment she could feel like radiation. Then she saw him, Vittorio Moretti. Older than Luca by 30 years, harder by 30 lifetimes. He stood at the center of a cluster of powerful men, holding court like a king among lesser nobles. His eyes found them, found her. He smiled. It was not a kind smile. Luca, how unexpected to see you here with company. Vittorio's gaze raked over Elena with surgical precision. And who might this be? Father, this is Elena, my wife. The word landed like a grenade. Vittorio's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, calculation, something darker. Your wife. He repeated it slowly. How sudden. How convenient. Not convenient. Necessary. Luca's tone carried warning. Elena, this is my father, Vittorio Moretti. She extended her hand. Vittorio took it, his grip just strong enough to make a point. Elena what? Before you became a Moretti, who were you? Elena Marino. Marino. Italian, but not from our circles. He hadn't released her hand. What did you do, Elena Marino, before you became my daughter-in-law? The truth would destroy her. The lie would be exposed. She chose something in between. I worked in service, nothing glamorous. Service? Vittorio's smile sharpened. How delightfully vague. Luca does love his secrets. I love my wife. Luca's hand tightened on her back. And I'd appreciate if you treated her with the respect that status demands. Father and son stared at each other, the air between them crackling with unspoken conflict. Finally, Vittorio released her hand. Of course, welcome to the family, Elena. I'm sure we'll get to know each other very well. He turned to Luca. We should talk. Later. Privately. Tomorrow. My office. Vittorio walked away, leaving Elena feeling like she'd just survived the first round of something brutal. That went well, Luca muttered. That was well? You're still standing. That's a victory. The rest of the evening blurred together. Conversations that meant nothing, smiles that felt like armor, Luca's hand never leaving the small of her back. She was exhausted by the performance, drained by the constant assessment. Finally, mercifully, they left. In the car, Luca loosened his tie, closing his eyes. You did well tonight. I felt like a fraud. Everyone in that room was a fraud in some way. You just wore it more honestly than most. He opened his eyes, looking at her. My father will dig into your past. He'll find out about the debt, the eviction, all of it. I know. And he'll use it to try to convince me this marriage is a mistake. Is it? The question hung between them. Ask me again in 6 months, Luca said finally. When they arrived home, Elena went straight to her suite. She peeled off the expensive dress, removed the borrowed jewelry, washed away the makeup. In the mirror, her own face looked back, tired, uncertain, but still hers. She climbed into the too-soft bed and realized something terrifying. She was already in too deep, and they were only 3 days in. The morning sun hit Elena's face like an interrogation light. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying every moment of the gala, every calculating look from Vittorio, every whispered assessment from people who'd measured her worth in the time it took to sip champagne. Margaret knocked softly before entering with a breakfast tray. Mr. Moretti asked me to inform you that Simone will be here at 10. You have another event this evening. Another one? Family dinner at the elder Mr. Moretti's estate. Margaret's expression was carefully neutral, but Elena caught the flicker of sympathy. It's a weekly tradition. Of course it was. Elena pushed herself upright, accepting the coffee like a lifeline. What should I expect? Margaret hesitated, then said quietly, Expect everything you experienced last night, but more intimate, more personal. They'll have had time to research you by now. The coffee turned bitter in her mouth. Simone arrived precisely at 10 with an assistant carrying garment bags and a makeup case that looked like it could stock a department store. Today we go for understated elegance, she announced, circling Elena like a general surveying troops. Vittorio Moretti's home is old money, old rules. We dress to show respect while asserting your position. My position is what? The woman who appeared out of nowhere? As Luca Moretti's wife. That's the only position that matters. Simone pulled out a dress in deep burgundy, classic cut, expensive fabric. Trust me, Mrs. Moretti, I've dressed 3 generations of this family. I know exactly what's required. The transformation took 2 hours. When Simone finally stepped back, Elena barely recognized herself again. The woman in the mirror looked composed, elegant, like she'd been born into silk and certainty. Remember, Simone said as she packed her things, confidence is 90% of the performance. The other 10% is knowing when to smile and when to show teeth. Luca was waiting in the foyer when Elena descended the stairs. He looked up from his phone, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or appreciation. It vanished too quickly to name. You look the part, he said. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. With my family, looking the part is half the battle. He offered his arm, the gesture so natural it might have been genuine. The other half is surviving the actual combat. Dante drove them through the city to the older, wealthier hills where estates hid behind walls and heritage. Vittorio's home was a fortress disguised as elegance, iron gates, stone walls, security that didn't bother pretending to be subtle. How bad is this going to be? Elena asked as they pulled through the gates. That depends on what he found out about you. Luca's tone was matter of fact. He had roughly 18 hours to dig. My father is nothing if not thorough. So he knows everything. He knows the facts. What he doesn't know is who you actually are. Luca turned to face her. Facts are just data points, Elena. It's how you own them that matters. The car stopped. Luca stepped out and extended his hand. Elena took it, let him guide her up marble steps to doors that opened before they could knock. A butler, because of course there was a butler, ushered them inside. The interior was museum quality. Each piece of furniture a statement of wealth accumulated across generations. Oil paintings in gilded frames, sculptures that belonged in galleries, the subtle scent of old money and older power. Luca, and the mysterious Elena. Vittorio emerged from a sitting room, scotch in hand despite the early hour. Welcome to my home. Please, come in. The family is eager to meet you properly. The family, plural. Elena's stomach dropped. The sitting room contained 6 people arranged like a jury. Vittorio took his seat at the head, a throne disguised as an armchair. To his right sat a woman in her 60s with Luca's eyes and a smile sharp enough to cut. His mother, clearly. 2 men who looked like Luca but harder, older, flanked the sides. And 2 women, beautiful and cold, who assessed Elena with the efficiency of actuaries calculating risk. Elena, Allow me to introduce everyone. Vittorio gestured with his glass. My wife, Carmela. My sons, Marco and Antonio. Their wives, Francesca and Bianca. It's nice to meet you all, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. Is it? Carmela's smile didn't reach her eyes. Please, sit. Tell us about yourself. We know so little, and Luca has been remarkably secretive about his sudden marriage. Luca guided Elena to a settee, sitting close enough that their legs touched. A united front. Elena and I prefer to keep our private life private. How modern, Marco said. He was older than Luca by perhaps 5 years, with the same build but meaner eyes. But surely you understand our concern. Our brother marries a complete stranger, and we're expected to simply accept it? You're expected to respect it, Luca replied coolly. Antonio leaned forward, scotch in hand, expression calculating. We're family, Luca. Family looks out for each other, so naturally we did some looking. His gaze fixed on Elena. Interesting what we found. Here it came, the dismantling. Elena Marino, Antonio continued, 26, graduated from community college with a degree in literature, worked at Marino's Italian kitchen for 4 years as a waitress. Currently, or rather formerly, $38,000 in student loan debt, $11,000 in credit card debt, and facing eviction from a studio apartment in the warehouse district. Each fact landed like a slap. Elena forced herself to breathe normally, to meet his gaze without flinching. Did I miss anything? Antonio asked, his smile venomous. Yes, Elena said quietly. You missed that I paid my own way through school while working full-time, that I supported my mother through her illness until she passed, that every dollar of that debt was earned honestly, trying to build something better than what I was born into. The room went silent. How touching, Francesca said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. But you have to admit it's quite the coincidence. A woman drowning in debt suddenly marries into one of the wealthiest families in the city. It's not a coincidence, Luca said, his voice dropping into dangerous territory. I chose Elena. That's all that matters. Is it, though? Vittorio set down his glass with calculated precision. Because from where I'm sitting, this looks remarkably like a business transaction. My son, who's never shown interest in marriage, suddenly produces a wife with significant financial problems that would be conveniently solved by this union. Convenient for whom? Elena asked before she could stop herself. Vittorio's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? You said it's convenient. I'm asking for whom? Because from my perspective, marrying into this family has been the least convenient thing I've ever done. Elena felt Luca tense beside her but pushed forward. Last night, I was assessed, judged, and dismissed by every person at that gala. Today, I'm sitting in a room where I'm being interrogated like a suspect. So please, explain to me how any of this is convenient. Carmela made a small sound that might have been approval or surprise. You have spirit, Vittorio said. I'll grant you that. But spirit doesn't answer the question of why my son chose you, specifically you. Out of every woman in this city, every option available to him, he chose a waitress with nothing to offer but debt and desperation. Father, Luca's voice carried warning. No, it's fine. Elena stood, forcing herself to meet Vittorio's calculating stare. You want to know why he chose me? Ask him. But understand something. I may have come from nothing, but I'm not nothing. I worked every day of my life. I earned every degree, every dollar, every moment of the life I built. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And when your son offered me something different, I took it. Not because I'm desperate, because I'm smart enough to recognize an opportunity. An opportunity, Vittorio repeated. Interesting choice of words. Father, that's enough. Luca stood, moving beside Elena in a gesture of solidarity that felt almost genuine. Elena is my wife. She's part of this family now. You can accept that with grace, or you can make this difficult. But the outcome is the same, Marco laughed, sharp and humorless. Always the rebel. Tell me, little brother, does she know about the bet? Elena's heart stopped. Luca went very still beside her. Marco. What bet? Elena asked, though part of her already knew. Part of her had always known. Oh, this is delicious, Antonio said, grinning. She doesn't know. Know what? Elena turned to Luca. What bet? Vittorio smiled, and it was the cruelest expression she'd ever seen. The bet I made with my son 2 weeks ago, $5 million, that he couldn't maintain a stable relationship for 6 months. I called him reckless, uncommitted, incapable of the discipline leadership requires. He paused, letting each word sink in. And 3 days later, he produced you. The room tilted. Elena stepped back, putting distance between herself and Luca. You told them. No, Luca said quickly. I didn't. They figured it out on their own. Did we? Vittorio asked. Or is it simply obvious? A sudden marriage to a woman with crushing debt, perfectly timed to win a $5 million bet. It doesn't take a genius to connect those dots. The marriage is real, Luca insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. The contract, the clinical ceremony, the separate bedrooms, it all made perfect sense now. She wasn't a wife. She was a chess piece in a family game she didn't understand. Elena, Luca reached for her. She stepped back again. Don't. How much is he paying you? Francesca asked, leaning forward with predatory interest. Surely you negotiated something. What's your price for 6 months of pretending? The question hung in the air like poison. Elena looked at Luca, waiting for him to deny it, to tell his family they were wrong, that the marriage was genuine, that she mattered beyond the bet. He said nothing. I see. Elena's voice came out steady, despite the devastation spreading through her chest. Excuse me, I need some air. She walked out of the room with her spine straight and her head high, made it through the foyer, past the butler, down the marble steps. She kept walking, through the manicured gardens, past the fountain, toward the gates that were too far away to reach on foot. Elena, wait. Luca caught up to her near a rose garden that probably cost more than her annual salary used to. Please, just stop. She spun on him. You told them. You said they wouldn't know this was contractual, that your father believed it was real. You lied. I didn't tell them. They're not idiots. They put the pieces together. And you didn't deny it. You stood there and let them eviscerate me, let them reduce our marriage to a transaction, and you said nothing. What did you want me to say? Luca's composure cracked, showing frustration beneath. That I hired you? That this is a business arrangement? Confirming it would only make things worse. Worse than what? Worse than sitting in that room while your family treats me like a prostitute you're paying for 6 months of service? That's not what this is. Isn't it? I'm providing a service, playing your wife. You're paying me $5 million. How is that different? Luca ran a hand through his hair, the first truly uncontrolled gesture she'd seen from him. It's different because... He stopped, searching for words. Because you're not just performing a role, you matter. Do I? Or do I just matter until the bet is won and the contract expires? Elena, Mrs. Moretti. Carmela approached from the house, moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime navigating dangerous situations. May I speak with you? Alone. Luca looked like he wanted to argue, but his mother's expression stopped him. 5 minutes, he said, then walked back toward the house. Carmela waited until he was out of earshot before speaking. My sons are cruel. My husband is ruthless. This is not news to anyone who knows our family. She studied Elena with eyes that saw too much. But you stood in that room and refused to break. That's worth noting. I don't need your approval. Good, because you won't get it easily. Carmela plucked a rose from a nearby bush, handling it carefully despite the thorns. Let me tell you something about the Moretti family. We eat our own. We test. We push. We find weaknesses and exploit them. It's survival, encoded into our DNA. That's a terrible way to live. Perhaps, but it's kept us alive for 4 generations in a world that would happily destroy us. She turned the rose in her fingers. My son Luca, he's different from the others. Smarter, yes, but also softer in ways that terrify his father. Vittorio sees it as weakness. I see it as evolution. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the first woman Luca has ever brought home who didn't immediately start calculating how to increase her own power through him. Carmela met her gaze directly. Bet or no bet, contract or no contract, you're here because Luca chose you, and my son doesn't choose randomly. He chose me because I was convenient, because I was desperate enough to say yes. He chose you because you spilled water on him and apologized with dignity instead of tears. Carmela smiled slightly. Don't underestimate that. In our world, dignity under pressure is rarer than diamonds. She walked away, leaving Elena alone in a garden that cost more than dreams. Elena found a bench hidden behind a hedge and sat, trying to process everything. The bet. The family. The the way Luca had stood silent while they tore her apart. The contract suddenly felt less like an opportunity and more like a trap. 20 minutes passed before Luca found her. He sat on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining distance. "I should have defended you better in there," he said finally. "Yes, you should have. My family operates on power dynamics. If I'd appeared defensive, they would have pushed harder. Sometimes the best defense is no defense at all." That's a convenient rationalization. It's the truth of how we survive each other. Luca turned to look at her. "I know this isn't what you signed up for." The contract specified public appearances, not family warfare. The contract didn't specify a lot of things. Elena kept her gaze on the gardens. Like how it would feel to be treated as less than human, or how isolating it is to be surrounded by people who see you as a temporary inconvenience. Don't lie to me, Luca, please. I can handle cruelty. I can handle judgment, but don't insult me with lies. He was quiet for a long moment. You're right. They see you as temporary, as beneath us, as someone who will be gone in 6 months, leaving no permanent mark. And you, how do you see me? The question hung between them, weighted with more meaning than either wanted to acknowledge. "I see someone who's stronger than she realizes," Luca said slowly. "Someone who walked into a room full of predators and refused to bleed in front of them. I'm bleeding now." "I know, but they don't. That's what matters." Elena finally looked at him, really looked at him, saw the careful control, the armor he wore as comfortably as his expensive suits. "Do you ever get tired of it? The performance, the constant calculation?" "Every day. But tired doesn't mean I can stop." "Why not?" "Because this is who we are. Who I am. The family, the business, the careful balance of power and fear, it's all I've ever known." "That's sad." Luca's laugh was bitter. "Perhaps, but it's also reality." They sat in silence, two people bound by contract and circumstance, pretending to be something they weren't. "We should go back inside," Luca said eventually. "Leaving will only feed their certainty that you can't handle the pressure." "I can't handle the pressure." "Then we'll pretend you can. Isn't that what we're both good at? Pretending?" Elena stood, smoothing her dress, rebuilding her armor. "Fine, but next time they attack me, you defend me. I don't care about your power dynamics or survival strategies. If I'm going to be your wife for 6 months, you protect me. That's the deal." Something shifted in Luca's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Agreed. They walked back to the house together, his hand settling on the small of her back again. This time, the gesture felt less like performance and more like alliance. Dinner was excruciating. 3 courses of exquisite food that Elena barely tasted while navigating conversational landmines disguised as small talk. Francesca asked pointed questions about Elena's family. Antonio made subtle comments about social climbing. Marco watched everything with calculating eyes. But Luca kept his word. Every time someone pushed too far, he redirected. Every subtle insult was met with a cooler, sharper response. He defended without appearing defensive, protected without seeming weak. Elena started to understand the game. By dessert, Vittorio was watching them both with something that might have been grudging respect. "Tell me, Elena," he said, setting down his wine glass. "What do you want from this marriage?" The table went quiet. Every eye turned to her. Elena could have said money, could have admitted the debt, the desperation, the contract. Instead, she said, "I want what everyone wants from marriage: partnership, respect, the knowledge that someone has your back when the world gets hard." "How idealistic," Vittorio said, "and how naive." "Is it? Or is cynicism just easier than hope?" Carmela made that sound again, definitely approval this time. Vittorio studied Elena for a long moment. 6 months, he said finally. "Let's see if your idealism survives 6 months in this family." "Let's see if your cynicism survives meeting someone who refuses to adopt it," Elena replied. For the first time all evening, Vittorio's smile looked almost genuine. "I think I'm beginning to understand your choice, Luca. She has teeth." "I told you she did," Luca said. The dinner ended shortly after. Carmela kissed Elena's cheek at the door, a gesture that felt like acceptance, or at least acknowledgement. Vittorio shook Luca's hand and said something too quiet for Elena to hear. In the car, Elena's hands shook from the adrenaline crash. "You did well," Luca said. "I feel like I just survived a gladiator arena." "You did, and you're still standing. That's more than most people manage their first time with my family. Is it always like that? Usually worse. Tonight they were being polite because you're new. He looked at her. It will get harder before it gets easier. They'll push, test, try to find the breaking point. Can you handle that? Elena thought about the contract, the money, the 6 months stretching ahead like a prison sentence. Then she thought about her old apartment, the eviction notice, the endless treadmill of poverty. I can handle anything for 6 months, she said. Good, because in 2 days we have another gala, and next week there's a business dinner with associates from the East Coast. And the week after that, I get it, the performance continues. Until it doesn't. Luca's tone was unreadable. They drove home in silence. The mansion felt less foreign now, more familiar. Still not home, but perhaps not quite enemy territory either. Margaret met them at the door. There's someone here to see Mrs. Moretti. She insisted on waiting. Elena's heart jumped. Who? A woman emerged from the sitting room, late 40s, designer clothes, calculating eyes. She extended a manicured hand. Mrs. Moretti, I'm Victoria Chen. I represent the Women's Charitable Foundation. We organize the city's most significant philanthropic events. Her smile was professional, practiced. I'm here to invite you to join our board. Elena blinked. Your board? As Luca Moretti's wife, you now hold significant social capital. We'd like to help you use it productively. The board meets weekly, organizes 4 major fundraisers annually, and directs charitable giving across the city. Victoria handed her an embossed folder. The position comes with responsibilities, of course, but also influence. Real influence. Luca appeared at Elena's side. She'll need time to consider. Of course. But I hope you'll say yes, Mrs. Moretti. Women like us need to support each other in this world. Victoria's smile sharpened. Especially women who've married into families like the Morettis. She left, trailing expensive perfume and veiled implications. What was that? Elena asked, staring at the folder. That was the charitable foundation realizing you're either going to be an asset or a liability. They want to control which. Luca took the folder, flipping through it. It's actually not a bad opportunity. Real work, real impact, and it would give you something to do beyond attending events. You think I should accept? I think you should decide what you want. This marriage may be contractual, but you still have choices within it. Elena took the folder back. I'll think about it. That night, alone in her suite, she read through the foundation's materials. Real charitable work, genuine impact, a chance to do something meaningful with the position she'd bought into. She found Luca in his study, paperwork spread across his desk, the lamp casting shadows across his face. I want to accept the board position, she said from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. You're sure? If I'm going to play this role, I might as well do something worthwhile with it, better than just standing around looking decorative. You're more than decorative, Elena. Am I? Sometimes I'm not sure what I am anymore. Luca stood, moving around the desk. You're a woman who survived my family's first assault, who stood in my father's home and refused to break, who's smart enough to see opportunity in a situation most people would find overwhelming. He stopped a few feet away. That's not nothing. It's not $5 million either. No, it's worth more. The words hung between them, impossible and dangerous. Elena stepped back. I should go. It's late. Elena? Good night, Luca. She fled to her suite before he could say whatever he'd been about to say, before she could acknowledge the shift happening between them, the way the performance was starting to feel less like acting and more like truth. The next morning brought Simone again, this time for a photo shoot. Vogue wants a feature on the city's power couples, she explained, transforming Elena into someone who looked like they belonged in glossy magazines. It's excellent exposure. The photographer posed them in Luca's study, in the gardens, on the terrace overlooking the city. Luca's hand on her waist, her head on his shoulder, staged intimacy that felt dangerously real. Beautiful, the photographer murmured. The chemistry is incredible. You can't fake that kind of connection. Except they were faking it. All of it, weren't they? That evening, Elena attended her first Women's Charitable Foundation meeting. 10 women, all married to powerful men, all playing the same game of influence disguised as philanthropy. They welcomed her with careful smiles and calculating eyes. We're so pleased to have you, Mrs. Moretti, said the chairwoman, a steel magnolia named Patricia Huntington. Your husband's family has been generous supporters of our work. We hope you'll continue that tradition. I'm more interested in being involved than just writing checks, Elena said. The room went quiet. How refreshing, Patricia said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. We always appreciate hands-on involvement. Elena spent the next 2 hours learning about fundraising galas, grant applications, and the complex politics of charitable giving. She took notes, asked questions, and began to understand that even philanthropy was a battlefield in this world. After the meeting, a younger woman approached her, mid-30s, intelligent eyes, genuine smile. "I'm Rebecca Morrison. I wanted to say thank you for what you said in there. Most new members just nod and sign checks." She lowered her voice. "Between us, this board needs people who actually care about the work, not just the social status." "I'm still learning," Elena admitted. "Aren't we all? Listen, if you need an ally in this world, call me." Rebecca handed her a card. "Being married into these families is complicated. It helps to have friends who understand." Elena took the card, grateful. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you've survived your first full year. Then we'll talk." Dante drove Elena home. She found Luca waiting in the sitting room, paperwork abandoned, scotch in hand. "How was the meeting?" "Intense, educational, surprisingly meaningful." She sat across from him. "I think I might actually be good at this." "I never doubted it. You didn't know me well enough to doubt it." "I knew enough. I knew you were smart, resilient, capable of adapting to new situations. The rest is just details." Elena studied him, this man she'd married for money, this stranger she was slowly beginning to know. What happens if we actually succeed at this? If we convince everyone the marriage is real? Then we win. The bet, the respect, the stability my father thinks I lack. And after? When the 6 months end? Luca's expression shuddered. "That's what the contract specifies. Clean ending, no complications." "Right, no complications." But even as she said it, Elena knew it was a lie. They were already complicated. Every dinner, every event, every moment of performed intimacy was binding them together in ways the contract hadn't anticipated. She stood. "I'm going to bed. We have that East Coast dinner tomorrow." "Elena?" She paused at the door. "For what it's worth," Luca said quietly, "I'm glad you're here. Not because of the bet. Because you make this easier somehow." "Easier how?" "I don't know, but you do." Elena didn't know how to respond to that, so she didn't. She just walked away, heart pounding, contract suddenly feeling less like protection and more like a countdown to inevitable loss. Part 3. Lưu ý. Viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liên mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện, phá hồi thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch, sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phủ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man, kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document, chỉ dần bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí, không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Showmore 10/21 Part 3. 3 weeks into the marriage, Elena stopped flinching when Luca touched her in public. His hand at the small of her back became familiar, almost comforting. The weight of his arm around her shoulders at galas felt less like performance and more like belonging. She told herself it was just adaptation, muscle memory, the same way she'd learned to navigate his world of designer gowns and 7-course dinners. She was lying to herself. The East Coast dinner had been exactly as brutal as promised. Associates of Vittorio's who looked at Luca like they were measuring him for a coffin, and at Elena like she was an amusing curiosity that would disappear soon enough. But they'd survived it together, presenting a united front that had earned grudging nods of approval. Now Elena sat in the Foundation's office, reviewing grant applications for women's shelters, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: purpose. Rebecca worked across from her, occasionally making dry comments about the more ridiculous funding requests. Someone literally applied for $50,000 to teach wealthy women how to meditate, Rebecca said, holding up the application like evidence in a trial. Because apparently inner peace requires significant capital investment. Elena laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. Reject it. Already done. Unlike some people on this board, I actually believe the money should go to people who need it. Rebecca set down the application and studied Elena. You're different than I expected. Different how? Most women who marry into families like the Morettis either become ice queens or victims. You're neither. I'm just trying to survive. No, you're trying to matter. There's a difference. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Can I ask you something personal? That depends on the question. Do you love him? Luca? Elena's pen stilled on the paper. The question struck deeper than it should have. That's extremely personal. Which is why I'm asking. Because the way you talk about him, or rather, the way you carefully don't talk about him, tells me more than any answer would. We have an understanding, Elena said carefully. An understanding. Rebecca's smile was knowing. That's what I told myself about Richard for the first year. That we had an understanding. That the marriage was strategic, beneficial, practical. Took me another year to admit I'd fallen in love with him somewhere between the business dinners and charity galas. That's not what this is. If you say so. Rebecca returned to her work, but the question lingered in the air like smoke. Elena tried to focus on the applications, but her mind kept circling back. Did she love Luca? The question felt dangerous. Love implied choice, permanence, something beyond the 6-month contract locked in his attorney's safe. Love would complicate everything. Love would destroy her when the contract ended. Her phone buzzed, a text from Luca. Need you home early. Something's happened. Her stomach dropped. She called immediately. What's wrong? Not over the phone. Just come home. Now. The line went dead. Elena made hurried excuses to Rebecca and caught a car home, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Someone had discovered the contract. Vittorio was dissolving the marriage. The bet was off. She'd be back to nothing, having tasted everything. She burst through the front door to find Luca in his study with 3 men she didn't recognize. All of them looked grim. Elena. Luca stood, his face carefully neutral. These gentlemen are from the district attorney's office. Her heart stopped. Mrs. Moretti, the tallest one said, flipping open a badge. I'm Detective Carver. We need to ask you some questions about your husband's business activities. I don't know anything about his business. That's what they all say, Carver replied. But you live here. You attend his meetings. You're present at family gatherings where business is discussed. You know more than you think. My wife is not being questioned without an attorney present, Luca said, his voice dropping into dangerous territory. Your wife can speak for herself, Carver shot back, unless she has something to hide. Elena looked at Luca, trying to read his expression. He gave the smallest shake of his head, a warning. I have nothing to hide, she said carefully. But I also won't answer questions without legal representation. That's my right. Carver's smile was thin. Smart. You're learning from your husband. That's concerning in itself. He handed her a card. We'll be in touch, Mrs. Moretti. Soon. They left, and the silence they created felt suffocating. What was that about? Elena demanded once they were alone. A fishing expedition. The DA has been trying to build a case against my family for years. They see you as a potential weak link. What case? What are they investigating? Luca poured himself a drink with hands that weren't quite steady. Money laundering, racketeering, the usual accusations, none of which they can prove because none of it touches me directly. My father built careful walls between the legitimate business and other operations. Other operations. Elena felt cold spreading through her chest. You mean illegal ones? I mean operations I'm not involved in, that I've deliberately distanced myself from. But your family is involved? My father's generation, yes. My brother's partially. Me? He drank, grimaced. I've spent 5 years building legitimate revenue streams, legal enterprises, clean money, but I can't erase the foundation it's built on. Elena sat down heavily. They think I know something. They think I can testify against you. They think you might be desperate enough to cooperate if they offer the right deal. Immunity, protection, maybe some financial incentive. Luca met her eyes. They don't know about the contract. They think this is a real marriage, which makes you a potential witness they can flip. Can they compel me to testify? Not against your spouse, Spousal privilege protects you from being forced to testify. But if you volunteered information, he trailed off, the implication clear. Elena's mind raced. If they found out about the contract that the marriage isn't real, then spousal privilege wouldn't apply. You could be compelled to testify about anything you've seen or heard, as Luca set down his glass. Which is why no one can ever know the truth. Not the DA, not the courts, not anyone outside this house. So I'm trapped. If I tell the truth about our marriage, I lose legal protection. If I lie and they find out, I could face charges for obstruction. Welcome to my world, where every choice is a trap and survival means choosing which cage you prefer. Elena stood, pacing to the window. The city stretched below, beautiful and indifferent. When you offered me this contract, you said I'd be protected. This doesn't feel like protection. The alternative is testifying against me or facing contempt charges. I'm trying to prevent both. By making me complicit in whatever your family does. You're not complicit. You're a wife supporting her husband. That's all anyone needs to believe. She spun to face him. Except I'm not actually your wife. This is all pretend, remember? Performance, transaction, 6 months and done. The marriage license is real. The legal status is real. That's all that matters for spousal privilege. Is it? Elena's voice rose despite her efforts to control it. Because it's starting to feel like you brought me into this to use me as a legal shield. Luca's expression hardened. That's not why. Then why? Why me, specifically? You said I was invisible, convenient, desperate. Was it also because if the DA came sniffing around, you'd have a wife who couldn't testify? No, that wasn't... He stopped, frustration cracking his composure. I didn't anticipate this investigation. The timing is coincidental. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Not in your world. Elena, please. I need air. She headed for the door. Where are you going? Out. Away. Somewhere I can think without feeling like every wall has ears and every conversation is a legal minefield. You can't just leave. There are security concerns, protocols. Then have Dante follow me. But I'm going. She grabbed her coat and walked out before Luca could argue further. True to his word, Dante appeared within minutes, falling into step behind her as she walked through the gardens and out the gates. The neighborhood was exclusive, quiet, the kind of place where wealth bought privacy and silence. Elena walked without direction, just movement, trying to clear the panic from her mind. A black sedan pulled alongside her. The window rolled down. Mrs. Moretti, what a coincidence. Detective Carver smiled from the driver's seat. Going somewhere? Just walking. That's not illegal. Not at all. Mind if I walk with you? I could use the exercise. Before Elena could refuse, Carver parked and fell into step beside her. Dante maintained distance, watching, unable to intervene without making things worse. Your husband seems very protective, Carver said conversationally. Rushed to get you a lawyer, shut down our questions before we even asked them. Makes me wonder what he's so worried about. Or maybe he just respects my rights. Maybe. Or maybe he knows that wives see things, hear things, understand things that husbands think they're hiding. Carver pulled out a folder, flipping it open as they walked. Take Sophia Romano, for instance. She was married to Vincent Romano for 3 years, thought she loved him. Then she found out what he really did. The violence, the exploitation, the lives destroyed. She came to us, testified. We put Vincent away for 20 years. Good for Sophia. She got a new life, new identity, new location, enough money to start over somewhere her husband's associates could never find her. Carver stopped walking, forcing Elena to face him. I'm offering you the same deal, Mrs. Moretti. Tell us what you know about Luca's operations, and we'll protect you, relocate you, give you the freedom to live without looking over your shoulder. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know anything. You've been married 3 weeks. You live in his house, attend his meetings, interact with his family. You know something. Even if I did, spousal privilege protects real marriages. But see, we did some digging into yours. Carver's smile sharpened. Married 3 days after you first met. No dating history, no relationship foundation, no engagement period. Your financial situation changed overnight from desperate to comfortable. It looks transactional, Mrs. Moretti. And transactional marriages aren't protected. The street tilted under Elena's feet. They knew, or suspected. Either way, the trap was closing. I have nothing to say to you without my attorney present. Fair enough. But think about it. Really think about it. Because in 6 months, when whatever deal you made with Luca expires, where will you be? Back to nothing, but now you're tied to a family the DA is actively investigating. That's not a safe position. He handed her another card and walked back to his car, leaving Elena shaking on the sidewalk. Dante materialized at her side. We should go back. He knows, or suspects. Boss needs to know about this conversation. The drive home felt like returning to prison. Luca was waiting in the foyer, his composure restored but his eyes betraying concern. What happened? Elena relayed the conversation word for word, watched Luca's expression darken with each detail. They're fishing, he said when she finished, trying to scare you into cooperating. They know the marriage looks suspicious. They're questioning its validity. Let them question. As long as we maintain the appearance, they can't prove otherwise. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Elena, I need you to trust me. I know this is more than you bargained for, but I will protect you, no matter what the DA threatens. How? How can you protect me from federal investigators? The same way my family has survived for 4 generations. Careful planning, strategic alliances, and never giving them enough evidence to act on suspicions. His hand settled on her shoulders, grounding. You just have to hold steady. Be my wife in public. Show no cracks in the foundation. And in private? In private, we figure out how to survive this together. The word together landed differently than it should have. Heavier. More permanent. Elena pulled away. I need to be alone. She escaped to her suite, her sanctuary, and found sleep impossible. Every scenario played out in her mind, testifying against Luca, being charged with obstruction, the contract being exposed, losing everything again. Near midnight, a soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. It's me, Luca's voice, quiet through the door. Can I come in? She should have said no. Instead, she opened the door. He stood in the hallway, still dressed, looking exhausted in a way she'd never seen. I can't sleep knowing you're upset. Since when do you care if I'm upset? Since... He stopped, searching for words. Since you became more than just a contract. The admission hung between them, dangerous and impossible to take back. Don't say things like that, Elena whispered. Don't make this more complicated. It's already complicated. We've been pretending it's not, but we're lying to ourselves as much as everyone else. Luca, 3 weeks ago, you were a stranger I hired to win a bet. Now you're the person I think about first when I wake up and last before I sleep. You're the one I want to tell when something happens, the one whose opinion actually matters. He stepped closer. That's not contract, that's not performance, that's real and it terrifies me. Elena's breath caught. This can't be real. We have an expiration date. Then we change the terms. Renegotiate, make it permanent. You don't mean that. You're just scared of the investigation, of losing control. I mean it. His hands cupped her face with startling gentleness. I've spent my entire life calculating risks and rewards, managing expectations, keeping everyone at arm's length. Then you spilled water on me and apologized like you actually cared about me as a person, not as a Moretti. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about what it would mean to actually have someone see me instead of my last name. You barely know me. I know you stand up to my father when most people cower. I know you take foundation work seriously when you could just cash checks and look decorative. I know you walked away from Carver's offer, even though it would have been the smart play for self-preservation. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I know enough to know I don't want you to leave in 6 months. Elena's heart was breaking and healing simultaneously, the contradiction almost unbearable. What are you asking me? I'm asking if there's any part of you that feels what I feel, that this stopped being pretend somewhere along the way. She should lie, should protect herself, maintain the boundaries, remember the contract. Instead, she told the truth. Yes, there's a part of me that stopped pretending weeks ago, that looks forward to seeing you at breakfast, that feels safer when you're nearby, that forgets this is temporary until I remember the contract exists. Her eyes burned. But that part of me is also terrified, because in 3 months, you could change your mind. You could decide I'm not worth the complication, and I'll be left having fallen in love with someone who was never really mine to love. Elena, don't make promises you can't keep. Don't offer me permanence when your world is built on calculated transactions. I can survive 6 months of pretending, I won't survive falling completely for someone who might walk away when the novelty wears off. She stepped back, putting distance between them before she did something irreversible like kiss him. I think you should go, she said quietly. Luca looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded slowly. We're not done with this conversation. Maybe we should be. He left. Elena closed the door and slid down against it, her composure finally crumbling. Tears came hot and fast, mourning something that had never quite begun but already felt like loss. The next morning arrived with brutal sunlight and a summons from Vittorio. Family meeting, mandatory attendance, no explanation provided. Luca was already dressed when Elena emerged, his expression carefully neutral. Whatever my father wants, we present a united front. Like always. Like always. The drive to Vittorio's estate felt like heading toward execution. This time, the entire family was assembled, brothers, wives, Carmela sitting like a queen observing her kingdom. Vittorio didn't waste time on pleasantries. The district attorney's office contacted me yesterday. They're investigating our family's business practices. Specifically, they're looking at financial irregularities and potential money laundering. This isn't news, Luca said. They've been investigating for years. What's new is their focus on you and your convenient marriage. Vittorio's gaze landed on Elena like a spotlight. They think your wife might be willing to cooperate in exchange for immunity. Elena would never, Luca started. Wouldn't she? Marco leaned forward. She's not family, not really. She's been here 3 weeks. Why would she protect us over protecting herself? Because she's my wife, Luca said coldly. Is she? Or is she a waitress you paid to play a role for 6 months? Antonio's smile was venomous. Did you really think we wouldn't figure it out? The room froze. Luca's hand found Elena's under the table, squeezing tight. I don't know what you're talking about. The bet, little brother. The $5 million, the sudden marriage to a woman with crushing debt. Marco ticked off each point on his fingers. The math isn't complicated. You don't know anything, Luca said, but his voice lacked conviction. Vittorio pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. We know everything. The contract, the terms, the payment structure. Your attorney may be loyal, but his paralegal was amenable to compensation for information. Elena's vision tunneled. Someone had leaked the contract, the one document that could destroy everything. That contract is privileged, Luca said tightly. Nothing is privileged in this family when our survival is at stake. Vittorio opened the folder, revealing pages Elena recognized. Her contract, the terms she'd signed, the clinical dissolution of their marriage reduced to legal language. This is not a real marriage, which means spousal privilege doesn't apply, which means Elena can be compelled to testify against you, against all of us, about anything she's seen or heard in this house. I haven't seen anything, Elena said, finding her voice. I don't know anything about your business operations. But you've been here. You've attended meetings. You've heard conversations. Carmela spoke for the first time, her tone almost sympathetic. Even innocent observations become evidence in the right prosecutor's hands. So what do you want? Luca demanded. What is this? Threats? Intimidation? This is reality, Vittorio replied. Your marriage is a liability. Your wife is a vulnerability we can't afford. Then what are you suggesting? Dissolve the marriage. Immediately. Send her away with her payment and enough legal protection to ensure her silence before the DA can use her against us. No. Luca stood, pulling Elena up with him. Absolutely not. This isn't negotiable. Everything is negotiable. And I'm telling you, Elena stays. Even if it destroys everything, Vittorio's voice rose. Even if her testimony puts your brothers in prison? Even if it brings down 4 generations of this family? I don't know anything, Elena's voice cracked. I've been here 3 weeks. I've heard nothing, seen nothing that could hurt anyone. I'm not a threat. You're the DA's dream witness, Marco countered. Sympathetic, articulate, with a financial motive to cooperate. They'll offer you immunity, protection, a new life. And you'll take it, because why wouldn't you? Because Elena stopped herself before saying something irreversible. Because you what? Vittorio leaned forward. Because you care about Luca? Because 3 weeks of playing house made you forget this was all transaction? Don't be naive, girl. When the DA offers you freedom from this family, from this world, from the inevitable consequences of associating with us, you'll take it. Everyone does. I'm not everyone. Prove it, Vittorio challenged. Prove you're committed to this family beyond a 6-month contract. The room waited. Elena looked at Luca, seeing the fear beneath his composure. Looked at his family, seeing the calculation, the certainty that she'd betray them first chance she got. Looked at Carmela, who watched with something that might have been understanding. The contract is void, Elena said quietly. Silence. What? Luca's hand tightened on hers. Elena turned to face Vittorio directly. You want proof I'm committed? The contract is void. I don't want the $5 million. I don't want the exit clause. I want the marriage to be real, legally, and actually. Make it permanent, and I'll have every reason to invoke spousal privilege legitimately. You can't be serious, Marco said. She's bluffing, Antonio added. But Vittorio was studying her with new interest. You'd give up $5 million for legal protection and a marriage to my son? I'd give it up to stop being treated like a temporary inconvenience, to actually belong instead of waiting for my expiration date. She met his gaze without flinching. You want me committed to this family? Then make me actual family, not a contract employee. Luca was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. Elena, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because your father is right about one thing. A contractual marriage doesn't protect any of us, but a real one does. Vittorio sat back, something like approval crossing his features. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Or more desperate. Possibly both. Does it matter which? Not particularly. As long as the outcome serves the family. He looked at Luca. Can you actually commit to this? To a real marriage? No exit clause? Permanent entanglement? Luca's eyes never left Elena's face. Yes. Then we'll have the attorney draw up dissolution papers for the contract. The marriage remains, but the financial terms are void. Vittorio's smile was sharp. Welcome to the family, Elena. Truly this time. I hope you don't regret it. The meeting dissolved into logistics. Attorneys to call, papers to file, strategies to reinforce the marriage's validity. Elena sat through it in a daze, trying to process what she'd just done. She'd trapped herself permanently in a world she didn't understand, married to a man she was falling for against all logic, surrounded by a family that might destroy her. And she'd done it voluntarily. In the car ride home, Luca was silent until they pulled through their gates. Why did you do that? He finally asked. Because they were going to force us apart, and I wasn't ready for that. Elena thought, Don't analyze it. Don't question it. I made a choice. Let me live with it. She escaped to her suite before he could respond, sat on the edge of her bed and tried to understand her own decision. Hours later, another soft knock. This time, when she opened the door, Luca held a folder. The contract, he said. I'm destroying it, right now, in front of you. He walked to the fireplace in her sitting room, struck a match, and set the papers ablaze. They watched together as the contract burned. The clinical terms, the 6-month timeline, the $5 million exit clause, all of it turning to ash. We're really married now, he said softly. No escape clauses. No expiration date. I know. Are you scared? Terrified. He turned to face her. Me too. And then he kissed her. It wasn't performance, wasn't calculated, just desperate and honest and inevitable. When they broke apart, Elena was crying. What if this is a mistake? She whispered. Then it's our mistake. Together. He left her suite that night, but the distance between them had fundamentally shifted. The contract was gone. The pretense was gone. What remained was real and terrifying and impossible to take back. Elena lay awake, listening to the house settle, and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or signed her own destruction. In 3 months, she'd have her answer. For now, all she had was the ashes of a contract and the weight of a choice she couldn't undo. The morning after the contract burned, Elena woke to find Luca sitting in the chair by her window, watching the sunrise. He'd stayed the night, not in her bed but in her room, like he couldn't quite bear to leave. How long have you been there? She asked, her voice rough with sleep. A few hours. I kept thinking about what you said to my father, that you wanted to belong. He turned to face her, and in the early light he looked younger, more vulnerable. I've never belonged anywhere either. Even in my own family, I've always been the outsider. Too soft for their world, too ruthless for the legitimate one. Elena sat up, pulling her knees to her chest. Then why stay? Why not just leave? Build something completely separate? Because leaving would mean abandoning my brothers to my father's influence. Marco and Antonio, they're not good men. But they're not beyond redemption either. If I leave, they become exactly what Vittorio wants them to be. That's not your responsibility, isn't it? Family is always our responsibility, whether we choose it or not. He stood, moving to sit on the edge of her bed. You chose this family yesterday. Chose us, despite knowing what we are. I need to understand why. Elena considered lying, offering some strategic explanation. Instead, she offered truth. Because somewhere between the gala and the family dinners and the foundation meetings, I stopped seeing you as a means to an end. I started seeing you as someone I wanted to know. Someone I was falling for despite every rational objection my brain could manufacture. That's not strategic. No, it's terrifying. Luca reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. Last night, when I kissed you, was that real? Or was it adrenaline, relief that the contract was gone? It was the realest thing I've felt in years. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But I need you to understand what staying means. The DA isn't going to stop investigating. My family will continue testing you, pushing boundaries, trying to find weaknesses. And being married to me, truly married, means you're tied to every consequence that comes from that. I know. Do you? Because once we cross this line completely, there's no going back. You can't wake up in 6 months and decide this was a mistake. Elena leaned forward, close enough to see the amber flecks in his dark eyes. I burned the contract too, Luca. I'm not looking for exit strategies. He kissed her then, slow and deliberate, like he was memorizing the moment. When they broke apart, Elena's heart was hammering against her ribs. We should take this slowly, he said, though his hand remained tangled in her hair. Probably. Establish boundaries. Figure out what this actually is before... Elena kissed him again, cutting off the strategic planning. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Or we could stop overthinking for once. I don't know how to not overthink. Then let me teach you. They spent the morning in her suite, talking like they hadn't allowed themselves to before. Luca told her about growing up in Vittorio's shadow, about watching his mother become someone else entirely to survive the family. Elena shared memories of her mother's illness, the slow slide into debt, the moment she realized she was drowning with no rescue coming. I used to fantasize about being invisible, Luca admitted. Just disappearing into a crowd, being nobody's son or heir or responsibility. I used to fantasize about being visible, Elena countered, about mattering enough that someone would actually see me. I see you now. I know. That's what scares me. Margaret knocked at noon with a knowing smile and a tray of food neither of them had requested. Mr. Moretti, your attorney called. He has the dissolution papers ready for signature. Thank you, Margaret. When she left, Elena asked, Do you think the staff knows? That the marriage was contractual? Probably. Margaret's worked for my family for 30 years. She knows how we operate. And now that it's real? Now she's probably thrilled. She's been telling me for years I need someone who challenges me. He picked at the food, suddenly looking uncomfortable. There's something else we need to discuss. Elena's stomach tightened. What? The bet with my father. He'll still expect to win it, regardless of whether the contract exists. That means we need to maintain the appearance of stability for another 4 months. We're not maintaining an appearance anymore. We're actually married. I know, but my father doesn't trust genuine emotion. He'll be watching for cracks, waiting for proof that this is still performance. We can't give him that satisfaction. So we keep performing. No, we just keep being us. Whatever that becomes. Luca set down his fork, meeting her eyes. I want to do this right, Elena. Court you properly, even though we're already married. Take you to dinner, learn what you actually like instead of what Simone picks out, understand who you are beyond survival mode. That's unexpectedly romantic. Don't sound so surprised. I'm capable of romance when I'm not busy managing a criminal empire. You said the business was legitimate. The parts I control are. The rest... He shrugged. I'm working on it, slowly transitioning everything away from my father's operations into clean ventures. But it takes time. How much time? Years, probably. Maybe longer. He studied her carefully. Is that a problem? Elena thought about the DA's investigation, about Carver's offer, about the life she could have chosen instead. Ask me again in 4 months when the bet is won. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. They spent the afternoon signing papers in the attorney's office. Dissolution of the contract, amendment of the marriage license. legal paperwork that made everything official and irreversible. The attorney, a severe woman named Patricia Chen, reviewed each document with clinical precision. Mrs. Moretti, you understand that by voiding the financial agreement, you forfeit any claim to the original $5 million. I understand. And you're entering into this marriage without prenuptial protection, which means in the event of divorce, you'd be entitled to community property division based on state law. I'm not planning on divorce. Patricia's expression didn't change. No one ever is, but the law requires I inform you of your rights. She slid the final document across the desk. This is permanent, Mrs. Moretti. Make sure it's what you want. Elena signed without hesitation. Luca signed beside her, his hand steady. When they left the office, Luca said quietly, "You didn't hesitate. Neither did you. I've been certain since the night you spilled water on me. Took you longer to catch up." Elena laughed despite the weight of what they'd just done. "Your certainty is either admirable or concerning. I haven't decided which. Can it be both?" They had dinner that night at a small Italian restaurant tucked away from the city's elite establishments, the kind of place Elena used to frequent when she could afford to eat out. Luca looked out of place among the checkered tablecloths and casual atmosphere, but he relaxed in a way she'd never seen. "My mother used to bring me to places like this," he said, studying the menu. "Before my father decided it was beneath our status. She'd sneak me out, tell him we were at business dinners, and we'd eat pasta and talk about normal things." "Do you miss her? The version of her that existed before?" "Every day. But she's still in there somewhere. I see glimpses when Vittorio isn't watching." He ordered wine, something modest instead of expensive. "She pulled me aside after the meeting yesterday. Told me not to let you go." "Did she?" "Said you're the first person I've brought around who looks at me like I'm human instead of a Moretti." "She's right." The waiter arrived with bread and oil, giving Elena time to process. "Your family is more complicated than I thought. Most families are. Ours just has better lawyers and worse secrets." Over pasta and cheap wine, they talked like people on a first date instead of a married couple navigating criminal investigations. Elena learned that Luca had wanted to be an architect before family obligations crushed that dream, that he read philosophy when he couldn't sleep, that he'd been in love once, years ago, with a woman who'd chosen safety over him. "Her name was Sarah," Luca said, his voice carefully neutral. "She worked in my father's legal department. Smart, beautiful, saw through all the family bullshit. We dated for 6 months before she figured out what being with me would actually mean." "What happened?" "She left, took a job in Seattle, sent me a letter explaining that she couldn't live in constant fear of violence or investigation or the moral compromises my world required. She wasn't wrong." "Do you still think about her?" "Sometimes, but mostly I think about how she had the courage to choose herself when I was too selfish to let her go easily." He met Elena's eyes. "You could have made that same choice. Carver offered you an exit. Why didn't you take it?" "Because running felt like losing, and I'm tired of losing." The truth settled between them, weighted with everything they weren't quite saying yet. They drove home through the city, Luca's hand resting on her knee, the gesture natural now. Elena watched the buildings blur past and felt the strange sensation of belonging somewhere to someone. The mansion's lights glowed warm through the darkness. "Home," her mind whispered. When had that happened? Inside, Margaret met them with a concerned expression. "Mr. Moretti, there's been a situation. Your brother Marco is in the study. He says it's urgent." Luca's jaw tightened. "Did he say what kind of urgent?" "No, sir. But he's been drinking, and he's agitated." Elena followed Luca to the study, dread building with each step. Marco stood by the window, scotch in hand, his suit rumpled like he'd been wearing it for days. "About time," Marco said without turning. "Your wife dragged you to some romantic dinner while the family burns?" "What are you talking about?" Luca demanded. Marco finally faced them, and Elena saw the barely controlled panic in his eyes. "The DA executed search warrants this afternoon. Father's office, Antonio's house, the warehouses on 5th Street. They're seizing records, computers, everything." The color drained from Luca's face. "What triggered the warrants?" "Someone talked. Someone gave them probable cause for RICO charges." Marco's hand shook as he raised his glass. "And we think we know who." "Who?" "Your wife's friend, Rebecca Morrison. Her husband Richard runs operations on the East Side. Turns out he's been cooperating with federal investigators for 6 months." Elena's stomach dropped. Rebecca. Her ally at the foundation. the woman who'd offered friendship in a hostile world. Rebecca wouldn't, Elena started. Rebecca's husband would, Marco cut her off. And pillow talk is a beautiful thing, isn't it? She hears things from you, tells Richard. Richard tells his federal handlers. They've been building a case using information that traces back to conversations you've had. That's impossible. I don't know anything about operations. You know names, dates, locations of family gatherings where business was discussed. That's enough for warrants. Marco advanced on her, rage and fear making him reckless. You've been feeding information to the feds through your foundation, friend. I haven't told Rebecca anything sensitive. Everything is sensitive. Every casual mention of where we were, who we met with, what properties we visited. You've been bleeding information without realizing it. He turned to Luca. I told you this marriage was a liability. I told you, enough. Luca's voice cut through the room like a blade. Elena didn't knowingly compromise anything, and attacking her won't solve the current problem. The current problem is that father is facing RICO charges because you brought an outsider into the family. The current problem is that Richard Morrison has been cooperating for 6 months, long before Elena joined this family. She's not the source, she's the scapegoat you're looking for. Marco's laugh was bitter. You're so desperate to believe in this marriage that you can't see what's right in front of you. She's a liability, Luca, and if father goes to prison because of her, it's because of his own choices, not Elena's existence. You've gone soft, weak, exactly what he always feared. Marco threw his glass against the wall, crystal exploding into fragments. When this family falls, remember it was your precious wife who broke it. He stormed out, leaving destruction and accusations in his wake. Elena stood frozen, Marco's words echoing in her mind. He's right. I told Rebecca things. Casual things, innocent things, but stop! Luca pulled her into his arms, his heart hammering against her ear. This isn't your fault. Richard's cooperation predates you. You were just convenient timing for Marco to blame. But I did talk to Rebecca about family dinners, about where we'd been, about nothing that wasn't already public knowledge. You attended events that were photographed, posted about on social media. You didn't reveal state secrets, Elena. Then why do I feel like I've destroyed everything? Because Marco is good at making people feel responsible for his failures. Luca tilted her face up, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. Whatever happens with this investigation, it's not because of you. It's decades of choices finally catching up to my father. What happens now? Now we call our attorney. We prepare for the possibility that family members might be indicted, and we figure out how to protect you from being caught in the crossfire. I don't want protection. I want to help. You help by not getting charged as an accessory. That's the best outcome here. They spent the night with Patricia Chen and 2 other attorneys mapping strategy. The search warrants were legitimate, built on Richard Morrison's testimony and 6 months of wiretaps. Vittorio, Marco, and Antonio were all potential targets. Luca had deliberately kept himself separate from the illegal operations, but association alone could be damaging. Mrs. Moretti, Patricia said, her tone clinical, you need to understand your position. If the DA believes you have relevant knowledge, they may subpoena you. Spousal privilege protects you from being compelled to testify against your husband specifically, but not about other family members' activities. I don't know anything about their activities. What you know and what the DA thinks you know are different things. They may attempt to compel testimony regardless. And if I refuse? Contempt charges. Possibly obstruction if they believe you're actively hiding information. Elena looked at Luca, seeing the same trapped expression she felt. So I'm damned either way. Testify and betray the family, or refuse and face charges. There's a third option, Patricia said. Cooperate to the extent of confirming you have no knowledge of illegal activities. Truthful testimony about your lack of involvement can't hurt anyone. Except it makes me look like the weak link, Elena said, the outsider who crumbles under pressure. Better to look weak than to be criminally charged. The meeting dragged past midnight. When the attorneys finally left, Elena and Luca sat in his study, exhaustion settling over them like ash. I should call Rebecca, Elena said. Find out if she knows what her husband's been doing. Absolutely not. Any contact with her now could be construed as witness tampering or obstruction. She's my friend. She's married to a federal informant. That makes her off limits until this is resolved. Luca poured scotch with hands that trembled slightly. I know that's unfair, but fair doesn't exist in federal investigations. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Same offer stands. You don't have to go down with them. Carver. She showed Luca the message. He read it and threw her phone across the room. Luca, sorry, I'm sorry. He retrieved the phone, checking for damage. They're circling, trying to isolate you, make you feel like cooperation is your only option. Maybe it is. Don't say that. Why not? If testifying about my lack of knowledge protects me legally, because the moment you agree to talk to them, my family will assume you're cooperating fully. They won't care about nuance or legal strategy. You'll become a threat. He gripped her shoulders, desperate. Please, Elena, don't talk to Carver. Don't give statements without our attorney present. Promise me. I promise. But Luca, what if they arrest your father? What if Marco and Antonio are indicted? Then we deal with it, together. The word together was becoming their anchor, the promise they returned to when everything else felt unstable. They slept in Luca's room that night, not making love, but holding each other like shipwreck survivors clinging to wreckage. Elena listened to his heartbeat and tried not to think about federal indictments or family blame or the life she'd chosen that was rapidly becoming a nightmare. The indictments came 3 days later. Vittorio, Marco, and Antonio were all charged with racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. The news broke like a bomb, splashing across every media outlet. The Moretti family, criminal empire, decades of allegations finally brought to formal charges. Elena watched the coverage in numb shock. Images of Vittorio being led from his home in handcuffs, Marco shouting at reporters. Antonio's cold silence as federal agents searched his property. Luca had been in meetings with attorneys all morning. When he finally came home, he looked hollowed out. They made bail, he said, pouring himself a drink despite the early hour. Substantial bail, but they're out. For now. Are you next? I don't know. They haven't charged me yet, but the association alone is damaging. He drank, grimaced. My legitimate business partners are already distancing themselves. Contracts are being reviewed, deals are falling apart. Even if I'm never charged, the taint is permanent. Elena moved to him, taking the glass from his hand and replacing it with her presence. Then we build something new, something completely separate from your father's empire. With what? My reputation is destroyed. With your intelligence, your planning, your ability to see 3 moves ahead. You've been preparing for this, haven't you? Creating distance, building clean revenue streams. Not fast enough. Then we accelerate. We make a public statement separating you from your father's operations. We prove you're not him. Luca looked at her like she'd suggested flying. That would mean publicly disavowing my family. It would mean publicly choosing a different path. There's a difference. My father would see it as betrayal. Your father is facing life in prison. His opinion matters less than your freedom. The words hung heavy between them. Elena watched Luca process, saw the moment he started calculating possibilities instead of obstacles. It would have to be airtight, he said slowly. Complete separation, new business entities, transparent operations. So we make it airtight. We hire the best attorneys, the best accountants, the best PR team. We show the world that you're not your father's son anymore. I've always been his son. Then become something else. Become your own man. Luca pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. How did I survive without you? Barely. Just like I barely survived without you. They spent the next week in strategic planning. Attorneys drafted separation agreements. Accountants audited every business venture Luca controlled. PR specialists crafted statements that positioned him as a legitimate businessman trapped by family legacy. The family's reaction was predictable and vicious. Marco called Luca a traitor. Antonio accused him of abandoning them to save himself. Vittorio said nothing, which was somehow worse. Only Carmela reached out, a brief phone call late one night. Your father is furious, she said without preamble. But I think you're doing the right thing. You do? I've watched this family destroy itself for 40 years. Maybe you're smart enough to escape before it destroys you, too. A pause. Take care of Elena. She's stronger than she looks, but this world eats strong women alive. I know, Mother. Do you? Because loving someone in this family is dangerous. We hurt the people we love most. I won't hurt her. Not intentionally, but intention doesn't matter when everything burns. The line went dead before Luca could respond. Elena found him staring at his phone, expression troubled. What happened? My mother thinks I'm making the right choice, which probably means I'm making a terrible mistake. Or it means you're finally breaking a cycle. Elena took his hand. Sometimes the right choice feels wrong because we're conditioned to accept dysfunction as normal. When did you become so wise? Somewhere between poverty and your family's dysfunction. Trauma is an excellent teacher. They launched the public statement 2 weeks after the indictments. Luca Moretti, separating from family operations, committing to legitimate business practices, cooperating with authorities to demonstrate transparency. The media coverage was intense. Some praised his courage, others condemned him as a rat abandoning his family. The DA's office took notice. Carver showed up at the mansion the day after the statement. Mr. Moretti? Mrs. Moretti? May I have a moment of your time? They met in the sitting room, Patricia Chen present, every word carefully considered. Interesting statement you made, Carver said to Luca, separating from your father's operations. That's quite a public denouncement. It's a statement of fact. I've been building legitimate businesses for years. The indictments gave me reason to formalize that separation, or to save yourself while your family burns. Believe what you want. My actions speak for themselves. Carver turned to Elena. And you, Mrs. Moretti, how does it feel watching your husband's family face federal charges? I feel the same way anyone would, concerned for them as people, hopeful that justice is served appropriately. Diplomatic. Your foundation friend Rebecca sends her regards, by the way. She feels terrible about the situation. Elena's heart clenched, but she kept her expression neutral. I haven't spoken to Rebecca since the indictments. Smart. Given her husband's cooperation, contact would be problematic. Carver leaned forward. But you should know. Richard's testimony includes references to conversations he had with Rebecca about things you mentioned. Innocent things, mostly. But they helped establish timelines and patterns. I never knowingly provided information about illegal activities. I believe you, which is why I'm here with an offer. We're prepared to grant you full immunity in exchange for testimony about what you've observed in the Moretti household. Not speculation, just facts. Who visited, when, what was discussed in your presence. Mrs. Moretti won't be providing any testimony without full details of what you're asking for, Patricia interjected. Fair enough. Carver produced a document. This outlines the scope of our questions. Nothing about criminal activities you weren't present for, just your observations as a household member. Elena scanned the document, her stomach turning. They wanted everything. Visitor logs, conversation topics, financial discussions, travel dates, innocent observations that would build a circumstantial case against the family. I need time to consider. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires and you may be subpoenaed without immunity protection. Carver stood. Choose wisely, Mrs. Moretti. Your husband made the smart choice by separating from his family. You should do the same. When he left, Elena felt like she might shatter. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't testify against them. Even with immunity? Patricia asked. Even knowing refusal could mean criminal charges? Even then. Because the moment I agree, I become exactly what Marco accused me of being, the outsider who destroyed the family. Luca was silent, staring at the floor. Luca? Elena prompted. I don't know what the right answer is anymore. His voice was hollow. If you testify, my family is destroyed and you're safe. If you refuse, you face potential charges and my family still might be destroyed anyway. So what do I do? I can't make this choice for you. I won't. This has to be your decision. Elena spent the next 2 days in agonizing deliberation. Rebecca called once, crying, apologizing for Richard's cooperation and the unintended consequences. Elena listened without saying much, too aware that the call might be monitored. On the final day of Carver's deadline, Elena made her choice. She called Patricia Chen and arranged a meeting with the DA's office. Luca's expression when she told him was unreadable. You're testifying. I'm telling them the truth, that I have no knowledge of illegal activities, that I observe normal family gatherings and business dinners. Nothing more. They'll twist your words. Use innocent observations to build their case. Maybe. But I won't commit perjury, and I won't face charges for refusing to cooperate when I have nothing to hide. Elena took his hands. I'm not betraying you. I'm protecting us both the only way I know how. By throwing my family to the wolves. By telling the truth. If the truth destroys them, that's their own doing, not mine. The testimony took 6 hours. Patricia sat beside Elena as she answered questions about family dinners, business associates who'd visited the home, conversations she'd overheard. She told the truth, that she'd been present at gatherings but hadn't understood the business discussed, that she'd met various people but didn't know their roles, that she'd lived in the mansion but had no access to Luca's business records. When it was done, Carver seemed almost disappointed. "That's everything?" "That's everything I know, which isn't much." "Well, it's something. Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Moretti." The immunity agreement was signed. Elena walked out of the federal building feeling both liberated and damned. The family's reaction was swift and brutal. Marco called her a traitor and said she was dead to the family. Antonio sent a message through attorneys that she was no longer welcome at family gatherings. Even Carmela's support seemed to waver. Only Luca stood beside her, though the strain was visible. "Did I do the right thing?" Elena asked that night, curled against him in bed. "You did the only thing you could do. Whether it's right?" He trailed off. "Time will tell." "Do you hate me?" "No, but I'm afraid of what this means for us, for the family, for everything we've built." "We've built truth, Luca, even if it's uncomfortable. Truth has a cost. We're about to find out how high." The trial was set for 6 months away. In the meantime, Elena and Luca existed in a strange limbo. Married but isolated, together but surrounded by the wreckage of choices neither could take back. And somewhere in the distance, Detective Carver waited with evidence Elena had unknowingly helped provide, ready to dismantle 4 generations of the Moretti Empire. The bet with Vittorio seemed almost quaint now, a relic from a simpler time when the worst thing at stake was money and pride. Now they were fighting for survival, freedom, and a marriage built on ashes that might not withstand the fire still burning around them. The weeks following Elena's testimony crawled by like wounded animals. Spring turned toward summer, and the city bloomed with a beauty that felt obscene against the backdrop of a family tearing itself apart. Elena stopped attending foundation meetings after Patricia Huntington politely suggested her presence was becoming a distraction. Translation: the Moretti name had become toxic, and even charitable work couldn't sanitize it. Rebecca tried to reach out twice more before her calls stopped coming. The friendship, like so much else, became a casualty of federal investigations and impossible loyalties. Elena found herself spending more time in the mansion's library, a room Luca had mentioned was his mother's refuge years ago. She understood why now. The leather-bound books and afternoon light through tall windows created a pocket of peace in a world burning down around them. She was reading there when Carmela arrived unannounced one afternoon, bypassing Margaret entirely and appearing in the doorway like an elegant ghost. "May I come in?" Elena set down her book. "Of course." Carmela settled into the chair across from her, moving with the careful grace of someone who'd learned to navigate minefields in heels. She was thinner than the last time Elena had seen her, the stress carving new lines around her eyes. "My husband hasn't spoken in 3 weeks, Carmela said without preamble. "He sits in his study, reviewing case files, and says nothing. Marco and Antonio come to the house daily, planning strategy, plotting revenge against everyone they blame for the indictments. You're high on that list." "I know." "Do you know they've discussed having you killed?" Elena's blood turned to ice. "What?" "Not seriously. Probably not seriously." Carmela's expression was haunted. "But in this family, the line between venting and violence can blur quickly. Marco especially is unstable right now, drinking too much, making reckless statements. Does Luca know?" "Luca has his own problems. The DA is still deciding whether to charge him as well. His separation from the family operations may have been too little, too late." Carmela leaned forward. "I'm telling you this because you need to understand the danger you're in. Not just legally, but physically. Why are you warning me? I testified against your family. You told the truth about what little you knew. That's not betrayal, that's survival." Carmela's voice softened. "I've watched strong women be destroyed by this family for 40 years. I don't want to watch it happen to you." "Then help me understand something. Why did you stay? Why didn't you leave when you could?" Carmela's laugh was bitter. "Because I was pregnant with Marco when I discovered what Vittorio really was. By the time Luca was born, I had 3 sons, no money of my own, and a husband who'd made it clear that leaving meant dying. You don't escape the Moretti family, Elena. You either become one of them or you're destroyed by them. I'm not you. I won't become what this family demands. Then you need to leave. Take Luca and run before the trial, before the verdict, before everything collapses completely. Luca won't leave his brothers. Luca's brothers are grown men making their own choices. He can't save them from consequences they earned. Carmela stood, moving to the window. Do you know what Vittorio told me when Luca announced his separation from family operations? He said, the boy has finally chosen his own execution. He believes Luca betrayed the family beyond redemption. And you? I believe Luca finally chose himself over his father's legacy. That took more courage than Stain ever would. She turned back to Elena. But courage doesn't stop bullets. It doesn't prevent accidents or convenient tragedies. You need to leave, both of you, before my husband decides that protecting the family requires eliminating threats. Are you saying Vittorio would kill his own son? Carmela's silence was answer enough. When Carmela left, Elena sat in the library's gathering shadows and tried to process the warning, tried to imagine Luca agreeing to run, to abandon everything, to start over in some anonymous city where the Moretti name meant nothing. She found him in his study that evening, surrounded by legal documents and half-empty coffee cups. He looked up when she entered, and the exhaustion in his eyes broke her heart. Your mother was here today. I know, Margaret told me. He set down the papers he'd been reviewing. What did she want? To warn me that staying here might get us both killed. Luca's expression didn't change, which told Elena he'd already considered the possibility. My father's attorneys advised him that cooperation from family members could reduce his sentence. He's been pressuring Marco and Antonio to provide testimony against each other, against me, against anyone who might be useful. Will they? Marco won't. He's too loyal, too afraid of being seen as weak. Antonio is more calculating. If he thinks cooperating serves his interests, he'll do it. Luca stood, moving to the window in the same spot his mother had occupied hours earlier. We're a family of sharks eating each other to survive. Then let's leave. Your mother's right. We can disappear, start over somewhere your father can't reach. And abandon my mother to that house? Leave Marco and Antonio to destroy themselves without anyone trying to stop it? You can't save people who don't want to be saved, Luca. Maybe not, but I have to try. Elena moved to him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Even if trying costs you everything? Especially then. Because if I run now, I prove my father right, that I'm weak, disloyal, incapable of standing firm when things get hard. He turned in her arms. I need to see this through. The trial, the verdict, whatever comes after. I need to know I did everything I could. And if everything isn't enough, then at least I'll know I tried. She understood then that Luca would never leave, that his sense of responsibility, however misguided, ran deeper than self-preservation. She could leave without him, accept Carver's offer of witness protection and a new identity, disappear into safety. Instead, she kissed him and said, Then I'm staying too. Elena, don't argue. I chose this family, remember? For better or worse. Right now it's worse, but that doesn't change my choice. You could die here. I could die anywhere. At least here I die, standing beside you. The trial date arrived with the inevitability of winter. Elena and Luca sat in the gallery, separated from the defendants by legal protocol and family hostility. Vittorio, Marco, and Antonio occupied the defense table in expensive suits and cold expressions. They didn't acknowledge Luca or Elena's presence. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Richard Morrison testified for 3 days, laying out operations, transactions, conversations. His testimony painted a picture of a criminal enterprise spanning decades, touching everything from construction to waste management to the ports. Elena watched Vittorio's face remain impassive throughout, watched Marco fidget and Antonio take notes, watched the jury's expressions shift from skepticism to certainty. When the prosecution called Elena's testimony into evidence, Marco's glare could have stripped paint. The prosecution would like to enter into evidence testimony from Elena Moretti, wife of Luca Moretti, regarding observations of family meetings and business discussions. Patricia Chen, now representing the defense alongside a team of high-powered attorneys, objected. Mrs. Moretti's testimony was regarding her lack of knowledge. It provides no material evidence of criminal activity. Her testimony establishes patterns of association and timelines that corroborate other witnesses. The judge allowed it. Elena's words, carefully truthful and deliberately limited, became part of the record. She felt Marco's hatred like radiation. During a recess, Antonio cornered them in the hallway despite his attorney's protests. "This is what loyalty looks like in your marriage?" he hissed at Luca. "Your wife testifies against the family, and you stand by her?" She told the truth about what she knew, which was nothing. Nothing that helps us, Nothing that protects us. Just enough to make her look cooperative while we burn. Antonio's face was twisted with rage and fear. When this is over, when we're convicted because of her testimony, when you're convicted, it will be because of your own choices, Luca cut him off. Don't blame Elena for refusing to commit perjury to protect crimes she didn't know about. She chose you over family. She is family, my family, and I choose her over your criminal enterprise every time. Security separated them before things could escalate. Elena's hand shook as Luca guided her away. He meant that threat, she said quietly. I know, but we're not running. The trial stretched across 6 brutal weeks. Witnesses testified, evidence accumulated. The prosecution built their case brick by methodical brick. The defense fought hard, questioning everything, but the weight of evidence was crushing. Elena and Luca developed a routine. Court during the day, strategy sessions with their own attorneys in the evening, sleepless nights holding each other and pretending tomorrow might be better. One night, 2 weeks before the verdict, Luca's phone rang at 2 in the morning. He answered with the automatic alertness of someone used to crisis calls. What? When? I'm coming now. He was out of bed and dressed before Elena could fully wake. What happened? My mother. She's in the hospital. Heart attack or stroke. They're not sure yet. His face was ashen. I have to go. I'm coming with you. Elena, if my father is there, I don't care. I'm coming. They arrived at the hospital to find Vittorio, Marco, and Antonio already in the ICU waiting room. The brothers looked hollow. Vittorio looked ancient, every one of his 68 years suddenly visible. When Luca entered, Vittorio's eyes flashed with something between relief and rage. Where have you been? I came as soon as I heard. How is she? Stable. For now. The doctors say it was a massive stroke. They're not sure about recovery. Vittorio's voice cracked on the last word, the first genuine emotion Elena had seen from him. Marco stood, putting himself between Luca and their father. You have some nerve showing up here after everything. She's my mother. You abandoned this family. You don't get to claim her now. Marco, not here, Antonio said quietly. Not now. They settled into tense waiting. Elena found coffee for everyone, the small gesture of normalcy bizarre against the circumstances. Hours crawled by. Doctors came and went with updates that said nothing definitive. Dawn was breaking when Carmela's doctor finally emerged. She's awake. Minimally responsive, but awake. The stroke affected her speech and motor control on the right side. We won't know the full extent of damage for several days. Can we see her? Vittorio asked, his voice small. Family only. 2 at a time. Brief visits. Vittorio went first with Marco. When they emerged 20 minutes later, both looked shattered. Antonio went next, then returned nodding at Luca. She wants to see you, both of you. Elena's surprise must have shown because Antonio added, she specifically asked for Elena too. They entered the ICU room to find Carmela diminished in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors creating a technological forest around her. Her left hand moved weakly when she saw them. Luca. The word was slurred but recognizable. I'm here, Mother. He took her hand gently. I'm right here. Elena. Her eyes found Elena's face. I'm here too. Carmela's left hand reached for Elena, pulling her closer. Leave. Both. Run. Mother, don't try to talk. Save your strength. Listen. The word was fierce despite the slur. Vittorio, planning something. After verdict, dangerous. What's he planning? Luca asked. Don't know. Overheard Marco and Antonio. Something about cleaning up loose ends. Her grip tightened on Elena's hand. Your loose end. Both. We're not leaving you, Elena said. Already leaving. Carmela's smile was sad and lopsided. This stroke. Blessing, maybe. Get out while Vittorio distracted. I won't abandon you. Not abandoning, saving yourself. Only thing that matters now. She looked at Luca. I love you. Always loved you most because you're not like him. Don't become him, trying to save us. Mother, promise me. Promise you'll live, really live, not just survive. Luca's eyes glistened. I promise. Elena, take care of my boy. I will. I promise. A nurse entered, indicating their time was up. Carmela released their hands, her eyes closing in exhaustion. They left her to rest, emerging into the waiting room where Vittorio watched them with calculating eyes. What did she say? That she loves us, Luca replied, the truth and a lie simultaneously. The verdict came 3 days later. Elena and Luca sat in the gallery, holding hands as the jury filed in. The forewoman stood, paper trembling in her hands. On the charge of racketeering, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of money laundering. Guilty. The litany continued. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Every charge, every count. Vittorio's face remained stone. Marco closed his eyes. Antonio stared at the table. Sentencing would be in 6 weeks. Until then, bail was revoked. Federal marshals led all 3 men away in handcuffs. As Vittorio passed their row, he stopped, looked directly at Elena. This isn't over, he said quietly. Remember that. The marshals pulled him forward, but the threat lingered like smoke. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed them. Luca gave a brief statement about respecting the jury's verdict and hoping his family members would take responsibility for their actions. Then Dante pushed through the crowd, getting them to the car. Where to, boss? Luca looked at Elena. Home. For now. The mansion felt different that night. Emptier, like it knew its masters were gone. Margaret prepared dinner they barely touched. The silence was oppressive. What do we do now? Elena asked. We wait for sentencing. We figure out what happens to the family businesses. He stopped. Honestly, I have no idea. Your mother said to run. I know. Luca, she's right. The trial is over. The verdict is in. There's nothing left to protect here. There's still my mother. She'll need care or rehabilitation, which she can get in assisted living with the resources your father accumulated. You don't have to stay to ensure that. Luca stood, pacing like a caged animal. If I leave now, I'm admitting defeat, admitting that my father was right about me being weak. Or you're admitting that staying in a burning building doesn't make you strong, it makes you stupid. Elena moved to him, forcing him to look at her. I need you to hear something. I didn't fall in love with you because you're a Moretti. I fell in love with you despite it. The man I love is smart, strategic, capable of building something legitimate and meaningful. But that man is being strangled by family obligation and misplaced loyalty. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm leaving, with or without you. I'm taking the immunity deal, accepting witness protection if necessary, and starting over somewhere your father's associates can't find me. Her voice broke. And I'm praying you choose to come with me. Elena, I know what I'm asking. I know it means abandoning your mother, your brothers, everything you've known. But Luca, staying here means dying. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Your father will make sure of it, even from prison. Luca was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Patricia, it's Luca Moretti. I need you to do something for me. 2 weeks later, they met with Carver in a secure federal office. Mr. Moretti, Mrs. Moretti, this is unexpected. Carver looked between them. What can I do for you? I want to cooperate, Luca said. Fully. Everything I know about my father's operations, his associates, the business structure. All of it. Carver's eyebrows rose. In exchange for? Immunity from prosecution for anything I might have been tangentially involved in. Witness protection for both of us. And help relocating my mother to a secure care facility where my father's people can't reach her. That's a significant ask. I have significant information. Offshore accounts my father doesn't think I know about. Associates in legitimate businesses who've been laundering money. Judges and politicians on the family payroll. Luca leaned forward. I can give you the entire infrastructure, the parts Richard Morrison never saw because they were too carefully hidden. Carver and his team exchanged glances. We'd need to verify the value of your information before agreeing to terms. Then verify. I'll give you 3 names right now as a sample. You run them. See if they lead anywhere. If they do, we have a deal. Luca provided 3 names. Carver made calls, checked databases, his expression growing more interested with each verification. These are significant targets. If you have more like this, I have dozens more. Account numbers, transaction records, meeting notes I kept as insurance without my father knowing. I've been preparing my exit for years. I just needed a reason to use it. He looked at Elena as he said it, and her heart clenched. The deal took 3 weeks to finalize. Full immunity for Luca in exchange for comprehensive testimony about the family's criminal enterprise. Witness protection for both of them, new identities, relocation funds. Carmela would be moved to a rehabilitation center in New Mexico, her location known only to federal handlers and Luca. Marco and Antonio were offered similar deals and refused. Pride or stupidity, it was hard to tell the difference. The night before they were scheduled to enter witness protection, Elena and Luca stood in the mansion one final time. They'd spent the day sorting through possessions, deciding what could come with them into their new lives. Not much. New identities meant leaving nearly everything behind. Any regrets? Elena asked as they stood in the foyer where she'd first entered as Luca's wife. Hundreds. But leaving isn't one of them. He pulled her close. You saved my life, you know that, right? If you hadn't forced me to see what I was becoming, I'd be in a cell next to my father right now. You saved mine first, the night you offered me that contract. Worst business decision I ever made. You were supposed to be temporary, and instead I became permanent. The best kind of permanent. They kissed in the empty mansion, two people saying goodbye to ghosts and choosing life instead. The trial for Marco and Antonio proceeded without them. Federal prosecutors used Luca's testimony to build an airtight case. Both brothers were convicted, sentenced to 20 and 25 years respectively. Vittorio received life without parole. At the sentencing, he made a statement. My son Luca has made his choice. He believes he's escaped this family, but blood is permanent. He can run, hide, change his name, but he'll always be a Moretti, and Morettis always come home eventually. The words were meant to be threatening. Instead, they sounded like the desperate hope of a man who'd lost everything. 6 months after entering witness protection, Elena and Luca stood on a beach in Oregon under a sunset that painted the sky in impossible colors. They went by different names now, names that didn't carry the weight of 4 generations of crime. Elena had enrolled in graduate school, finishing the education she'd abandoned years ago. Luca was building a consulting business, using his strategic mind for legitimate purposes. They'd bought a small house overlooking the ocean, nothing like the mansion but infinitely more home. Do you miss it? Elena asked as waves crashed against the shore. The power, the money, the Moretti name? Sometimes I miss the idea of it, the person I thought I needed to be. Luca took her hand. But then I wake up next to you without federal investigations hanging over us, and I remember why we left. Your mother called today. Her speech is improving. I know, she told me she's proud of us. First time she's ever said that. Do you believe her? I believe she's relieved that at least one of her sons escaped the family curse. They walked along the beach as the sun disappeared into the Pacific. Elena thought about the waitress she'd been, invisible, drowning, desperate. Thought about the woman she'd become, strong, purposeful, loved. I've been thinking, Luca said as they climbed the path back to their house, about Vittorio's bet. The $5 million? That feels like a lifetime ago. It was only 8 months, but technically we won. We maintained a stable relationship for 6 months, proved that I was capable of commitment. Except Vittorio never paid. Hard to collect from federal prison. True. But I was thinking, we don't need his money. We never did. What we built was worth more than $5 million. Elena stopped, turning to face him in the fading light. What did we build? A life. A real one, not performed for anyone's benefit but our own. Partnership, trust, love that survived federal investigations and family betrayal. He pulled a small box from his pocket. And I'd like to make it official. Again, but this time for the right reasons. He opened the box to reveal a simple ring, nothing like the ostentatious diamond he'd given her for their contract marriage. This was elegant, understated, real. Elena Marino, will you marry me? Not because of contracts or bets or survival strategies, just because I love you and want to spend the rest of my life choosing you. Tears blurred her vision. We're already married. Technically, but that marriage was built on contracts and convenience. I want to marry you again, knowing exactly who you are and who I am, and choosing this anyway. Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. They held a small ceremony 3 months later. Just them, a judge, and 2 witnesses they'd befriended in their new life. A bookstore owner and a marine biologist who knew them only as Lucas and Ellie. a couple who'd relocated from back east for fresh starts. As Elena spoke her vows, real ones this time, written from the heart, she remembered standing in a courtroom 8 months earlier, saying, "I do," to a stranger for money. How impossibly far she'd come from that desperate, invisible waitress. "I promise to choose you," she said, her voice steady and sure. In the easy moments and the impossible ones. When running would be simpler and staying requires courage. I choose you today and every day after. Luca's vows were equally simple and devastating. I promise to see you. Not the role you're playing or the person you think you should be, but the real you. The woman who spilled water on me and apologized with dignity. Who stood up to my father when most people cowered. Who saved my life by refusing to let me waste it. I see you, Elena, and I love everything I see. When the judge pronounced them married, they kissed like people who'd earned the right to happiness. The bookstore owner, whose name was Maria, hosted a small reception at her shop. Wine and cheese and laughter with people who knew nothing about Moretti family drama or federal investigations. Just a couple celebrating love. Late that night, in their house overlooking the ocean, Elena and Luca lay tangled in their bed. "Do you think it's really over?" Elena asked. "The danger, the threats, all of it?" "Vittorio will spend the rest of his life in prison. Marco and Antonio won't be out for decades. The associates we testified against are facing their own charges. As over as it can be. But your father said Moretti's always come home." "We are home. This place, this life, us, that's home now. The Moretti name is just history." He pulled her closer. "Besides, we're not Moretti's anymore. We're the Thorntons, remember? They're witness protection identities. Lucas and Ellie Thornton. Boring, anonymous, perfect. I like being a Thornton," Elena said. "No legacy to uphold, no empire to maintain. Just us, building something from nothing. We're good at that." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, the sound of waves replacing the silence of the mansion, peace replacing the constant tension. 6 more months passed. Elena finished her first semester of graduate school with straight A's. Luca's consulting business took off, bringing in legitimate money and satisfaction he'd never found in his family's operations. They adopted a dog from the local shelter, a goofy golden retriever who had no idea his owners used to live in a world of federal investigations and criminal trials. On the anniversary of their second wedding, the real one, Luca surprised Elena with dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the coast. "I have something to tell you," he said, as they waited for their food. Elena's stomach tightened. "Good something or bad something?" "Complicated something. The DA's office called. They want me to testify at the appeals hearing for my father's case. He's claiming his attorney provided inadequate representation. Will you do it?" I told them yes. One last time, one last testimony, and then it's done. The appeals will be denied, and that chapter closes permanently. When? 3 months. We'd have to go back to the city, though our identities would remain protected. Just testifying as witnesses, then leaving again. Elena reached across the table, taking his hand. "Then we'll do it together. One last time, and then we close that door forever." The appeals hearing was exactly as Luca predicted. Vittorio's attorney argued inadequate representation and procedural errors. The prosecution presented the overwhelming evidence again, including Luca's testimony about the family's criminal enterprise. From the witness stand, Luca didn't look at his father. He answered questions clinically, providing facts without emotion. When the defense attorney tried to paint him as a disloyal son seeking revenge, Luca's response was calm and devastating. "I'm not seeking revenge. I'm seeking freedom from a legacy I never wanted and a life I never chose. My father built an empire on violence and exploitation. I'm simply refusing to inherit it." Vittorio's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition that he'd truly lost his son. The appeals were denied. The sentences stood. As they left the courthouse, Elena spotted Carmela in a wheelchair, accompanied by a nurse. She looked better, still diminished by the stroke, but more present. "Luca!" she called out, her speech clearer than months ago. They approached cautiously. The nurse stepped back, giving them privacy. "Mother, you look well." "Better, getting stronger." She looked at Elena. "You kept your promise. Took care of my boy." "We take care of each other." "Good. That's good." Carmela fumbled with something in her lap, producing an envelope. "For you. Both of you." Luca took it, recognizing his mother's handwriting on the front. Don't open now. When you're home, safe, far from here. It's everything you need to know about Vittorio's offshore accounts, the ones even the feds didn't find. Money earned before the criminal enterprise. Legitimate investments. It's yours. Build something good with it. Mother, we don't need, not about need, about justice. That money doesn't belong in government coffers or frozen in legal proceedings. It's family money, and you're the only family member who deserves it. She reached up, touching Luca's face with her left hand. Live well. Love each other. Forget about the Moretti name and everything it cost us. That's all I want. They said goodbye to Carmela there on the courthouse steps. Elena suspected it might be the last time they'd see her in person, though they'd arranged for regular calls. Back in Oregon, in their house overlooking the ocean, Luca opened the envelope. Inside was account information for investments totaling $8 million. Legitimate money, carefully tracked and documented, separate from the criminal enterprise. Your mother just made us wealthy, Elena said, staring at the numbers. She just gave us options. Luca set down the papers. What do you want to do with it? Elena thought about the waitress she'd been, about the debt that had suffocated her, about all the people still drowning the way she'd been drowning. I want to start a foundation for women escaping bad situations, women who need money for education, career training, emergency housing, the things that would have saved me if they'd existed. A foundation, like the one you worked with before? Better than that one. Focused on actual help instead of galas and social climbing. Using our money, your mother's money, to give people real exits from impossible situations. Luca pulled her close. You're brilliant. Let's do it. They spent the next year building the Thornton Foundation, named for their new identity and their new purpose. The foundation provided grants, housing assistance, job training, and educational support for women escaping poverty, abuse, or exploitation. Elena ran it with the same dedication she'd brought to everything else, and it grew rapidly. The foundation's first major initiative was a scholarship program for community college students. Elena personally interviewed applicants, seeing her younger self in their desperation and determination. One applicant, a 24-year-old named Sarah, who was working 2 jobs while trying to finish her degree, reminded Elena so much of herself that she had to step outside after the interview to compose herself. You okay? Luca asked, finding her on the foundation's small patio. I was her. 3 years ago, I was exactly her, working myself to death, drowning in debt, seeing no way out. And now you're the way out. For her and hundreds of others. He wrapped his arms around her. That's not small, Elena. That's everything. The foundation awarded Sarah a full scholarship plus living expenses. 6 months later, she sent Elena a letter thanking her and sharing that she'd completed her degree and accepted a teaching position. The letter ended with, You saved my life. I hope I can pay it forward someday. Elena cried reading it, the good kind of tears that came from knowing you'd made a difference. 2 years after leaving their old lives behind, Elena and Luca sat on their porch watching the sunset. The golden retriever, named Chance because they'd given him one and he'd given them one, sprawled at their feet. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't spilled that water? Elena asked. Every day. But I'm grateful for broken heels and terrible timing. We've come a long way from that restaurant. We've come a long way from a lot of things. The contract, the bet, the federal investigation, all of it. Luca took her hand, the simple wedding band catching the light. Was it worth it? Everything we went through to get here? Elena thought about the journey, the desperation that had made her sign a contract to marry a stranger, the fear of his family and the federal investigation, the testimony that had branded her a traitor, the witness protection that had erased their identities, the years of rebuilding. Every moment, she said, the bad parts made the good parts possible. I wouldn't trade any of it. Not even the death threats from my brothers, especially not those. They proved we were important enough to threaten, which meant we were winning. Luca laughed, the sound free and genuine. I love your twisted logic. You love me, period. I really do. Desperately, permanently, inconveniently. Inconveniently? You've ruined me for my criminal empire lifestyle. Now all I want is sunset beaches and foundation board meetings. Very inconvenient for a reformed mobster. You were never really a mobster. No, but I played one convincingly for 34 years. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in impossible colors. In the distance, Elena could see other couples walking the beach, families playing in the surf, the ordinary beauty of people living ordinary lives. I'm pregnant, she said quietly. Luca went very still. What? I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks. I found out yesterday, but wanted to tell you somewhere perfect. This felt perfect. He turned to her, eyes wide with wonder and terror. We're having a baby? We're having a baby? A Thornton baby who will never know about the Moretti Empire or federal investigations or any of it. Just a kid with parents who love each other and built something good from something broken. Luca pulled her into his arms, and she felt him shaking, joy, fear, overwhelming emotion. I don't know how to be a father. My only example was Vittorio, and that's not exactly... You'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together, like everything else. Together, he repeated, the word a prayer and a promise. They told Carmela about the pregnancy during one of their regular calls. Her reaction was tearful joy mixed with fierce protectiveness. Name it anything but a Moretti name, she said. Let this child be completely free of that legacy. Already planned, Luca assured her. Completely fresh start. The baby arrived 6 months later, a daughter with Elena's eyes and Luca's stubborn chin. They named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope that cycles could be broken, that damaged people could heal, that love was stronger than legacy. Elena held her daughter in the hospital, watching Luca cradle the tiny human they'd created, and felt the last piece of her old life fall away. The waitress who'd spilled water on a crime boss was gone completely. In her place was a woman who'd survived, adapted, fought, and built something beautiful from ashes. She's perfect, Luca whispered, his finger tiny in Hope's grip. She's ours. That's all that matters. They brought Hope home to the beach house, to the dog who became absurdly protective of his tiny human, to a life that looked nothing like either of them had imagined but felt exactly right. 3 years after leaving the Moretti name behind, Elena stood in the Foundation's new headquarters, a renovated building that served as office space and temporary housing for women in crisis. The Thornton Foundation had grown beyond her wildest dreams, helping hundreds of women escape impossible situations. Luca had built his consulting business into a respected firm, using his strategic mind to help legitimate businesses grow. He'd proven that the skills that made him good at managing a criminal empire translated beautifully to legal ventures. Hope was walking now, babbling in toddler language, obsessed with chance and the ocean. She'd never know about courtrooms or contracts or the life her parents had escaped. That was exactly how they wanted it. The foundation was hosting a gala, the first one Elena had agreed to, and only because the money raised would fund a new shelter program. As she stood in a simple dress, welcoming donors and sharing stories of the women they'd helped, Luca appeared at her side. You look beautiful. I look tired. Hope didn't sleep last night. You look beautiful and tired. Both things can be true. He handed her a glass of champagne. Remember the last gala we attended together? The one where your father found out about the contract? That's the one. I was terrified that night. Of discovery, of failure, of losing the bet and proving him right about me. And now? Now I realize that losing the bet would have been the best thing that ever happened to me, because it would have forced me to stop caring about his opinion and start building my own life sooner. Elena clinked her glass against his. To losing bets and finding ourselves. To broken heels and spilled water. To everything that had to go wrong so we could get here. They drank, then circulated through the gala, talking to donors and supporters. The event raised $400,000. Elena announced the shelter program to applause and genuine interest, so different from the performative charity of her old world. Late that night, after Hope was asleep and the house was quiet, Elena and Luca stood on their porch watching the stars. Do you think they'll ever find us? Elena asked. Your father's associates, the people who might still hold grudges? Honestly, I think we're small enough now that we're not worth finding. We're not threats anymore, just people who left. And time has a way of making even the biggest betrayals feel less urgent. He pulled her close. But if they did find us, we'd handle it. Together. Together, Elena agreed, the word that had become their anchor through everything. I have something for you. Luca pulled out a small box, making Elena laugh. If you're proposing again, not proposing, just acknowledging. He opened the box to reveal a simple pendant, a tiny water droplet in silver. For the woman who spilled water on me and changed my life. She let him fasten it around her neck, the pendant settling above her heart. It's perfect. You're perfect. Our life is perfect, even the imperfect parts that got us here. They stood on the porch of their beach house, the ocean whispering its eternal rhythm, and Elena thought about the journey. From invisible waitress to Moretti wife, to federal witness, to foundation director and mother. Every role had taught her something, shaped her into who she'd become. The contract that had started it all was ashes now, burned away years ago. But what they'd built from those ashes was solid, real, permanent. "I love you," she said, the words simple, but weighted with everything they'd survived. "I love you too. Desperately, permanently, inconveniently." "Still inconvenient?" "Always. You've completely destroyed my ability to live a simple, uncomplicated life." "Good. Simple is overrated." They went inside, checking on Hope one last time before retreating to their bedroom. The mansion with its empty rooms and dangerous secrets felt like another lifetime. This small house with its creaking floors and ocean views was home in a way that marble and crystal never had been. As Elena drifted toward sleep, Luca's arms secure around her waist, she thought about Vittorio's bet one final time. $5 million that Luca couldn't maintain a stable relationship for 6 months. They'd won the bet, though Vittorio would never pay it. But in winning, they'd gained something infinitely more valuable than money. They'd found each other, found themselves, found a life worth living instead of just surviving. The waitress and the crime boss, the desperate woman and the trapped heir, the contract marriage that became real love, all of it had led here. To a beach house in Oregon where a little girl named Hope slept peacefully while her parents built tomorrow from the ruins of yesterday. It wasn't the ending either of them had imagined when Elena spilled that water 3 years ago. It was better. Real instead of performed, chosen instead of obligated, built on truth instead of contracts. And somewhere in a federal prison, Vittorio Moretti sat in his cell and wondered how his weakest son had become the only one who'd truly escaped. But Luca wasn't thinking about his father anymore. He was thinking about the Foundation's expansion plans, about Hope's upcoming birthday, about the life he and Elena were building one deliberate choice at a time. The Moretti empire had fallen. The Thornton family was rising, and that, Elena thought, as sleep finally claimed her, was exactly how it should be. The bet had been won, the contract had burned. What remained was love, hard-earned and impossible and completely, wonderfully real. The end.